Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
From the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
Good evening, folks, and welcome to a fine and spiffing evening on Alien Addict tonight. We are going to have Ashton Forbes. He is down at the bottom here somewhere in this little white bar. But yeah, if you really want to wait for some real drama, wait till about 3 hours, 4 hours in, where because we're going to be nice for about 3 hours. Really nice to him, and then right at the end we're going to be complete dicks. So without further ado, let me bring on my two boys. How you doing, lads? You
Good,
okay?
man. You didn't have to go so hard on the intro.
Yeah,
It was like, we're just going to make a quick intro while he's ushering in the fucking orchestra.
Right. Yeah, right, mate, that orchestra costs a lot of money. Should we bring the man on?
Yeah.
Ashton.
Hey, everybody. How's it going? Nice to see you guys, Alien Addict. How's it going? Ali Lee. You guys, everybody. Sweet.
It feels like 5
That
minutes.
intro was epic, man. Holy crap. That was amazing.
He's
I love the Oppenheimer quote.
Yeah, he's getting better and better at them, you know. Lee and I were thinking about having him replaced, but let him stay. No, Steve's doing good, man. We appreciate you coming back on, man, especially in light of you maybe a very trending thing in Twitter/X right now and the drama that's going on. And how you doing with all that?
Yeah, no, I'm doing great, man. It's I don't think I would have ever expected to even get to this point. You know, the future is totally uncertain, so I couldn't say what would happen, but we've had some really big names come in and supporting the content, retweeting some of the big content pieces. And, you know, I think I'm so grateful to all those people, everybody who's been following along with the evidence. Like, we've got more followers than people who've been on TV like many times over at this point, which I think goes to show the strength of the evidence. So despite the fact that there's a lot of haters, I think that they say that when you've got haters, that's when you know you've made it, you know? So I think maybe we are getting to that point now where, you know, it's starting to become a little bit more undeniable that there's really something here. But yeah, how are you guys doing tonight?
Good. We just finished watching the interview you did on the Concrete podcast.
Yeah.
And I think that was I think you held yourself excellently on it.
Thanks. Yeah, I think that was a big one. You know, I went out there, met Danny. What was it, about a week or two ago? You know, did his podcast. I thought he was very nice in general. I did feel like, he told me ahead of time he was skeptical. And so I wasn't too surprised by kind of some of his comments during the interview, like really trying to push the boundaries of, what the evidence really spoke to. I felt like the corridor crew thing kind of came out at the end. When I was sitting there with him, I saw him giving me these little smiles, like oh, something's probably going to be coming here, right? And I was actually afraid because I thought it was going to be like a recreation of the videos. Because on the podcaster that I was on the week before, who's like best friends with Danny, he says in his chat today, he said he's best friends with him. He was making up all this stuff about, oh, this major studio is going to recreate the videos, telling me they're going to recreate it in a couple days, trying to hype it up. And so I'm sitting there in that podcast, like, back in Florida, wherever, with Danny on the Concrete podcast, thinking, okay, maybe they were able to pull it off. This might be awkward. But no, instead I get on and it's just this guy just going through basically the Metabunk thread without even realizing that most of the things he was saying have already been long debunked. Right. So I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm just like, oh, I better start taking notes just in case this somehow gets edited out. Right. And Danny keeps telling me, like, hey, keep looking at the camera, keep looking at the camera. And I'm like, well, I was kind of weird why he was even doing that. Right. Telling me. And now in retrospect, I felt like he was trying to get it so that he could have some edited saying where it looks like I'm sweating or something. But I was cool as a cucumber. I was not worried even for a single moment. I thought that Nico of the Corridor crew like completely discredited himself by just, it stated so many false positions that were so easy to dismantle. I had everything ready to go, did it right there on the spot. And then later on, I was doing a stream the other day and people say, oh, did you guys know this? The Corridor crew guys also tried to debunk the real DOD Navy declassified videos. So we watched that
Dave
too.
was saying that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so these guys already had no credibility whatsoever. They're already known to try to discredit and, dismiss like footage that the government comes out and says is real. So I don't know. To me, it was a fun time. And no hate to Danny. I think he's a good guy. I just think that a lot of people, they project onto me their own insecurities, which is they project that they think that like I'm not being reasonable or that I'm stuck in my beliefs. But as you can see from that interview, it wasn't me who was stuck in beliefs, right? It's these people that why would you listen to what he's saying? Why would you listen? Well, I just debunked every single thing he said. What do you mean? So yeah, that was my kind of initial impression of that interview. But again, he's a good guy.
I think. Go ahead.
Sorry, Dave. I was just going to say that's what I remembered from the other podcast when his mate said that there was a professional video studio that was going to recreate the video, and I think that he even went as far to say using 2014 technology.
Yeah,
as well.
I did that. 2014 tech.
Yeah, turns out that guy's a liar, I guess.
Yeah. So I would be honest, like if they did come out with a video by a major studio that was able to do it in a few days, if you take that into serious consideration at the rate at which technology doubles, which like however many months, right? From 2014 to now, you needed all that time and a professional studio to recreate something that came out of nowhere that no one has ever taken responsibility for or credit. That's somebody's lifetime work of hobby that took years, almost a decade, and a professional crew with the latest in technology to make. Yeah. And he did it then. This guy should be running all these departments.
That's what I said. Why is this guy not leading Marvel Studios right now? If this guy is, I mean, even the Corridor crew Nico guy says that the video is perfect because there's no issues anywhere in it. Like 2 videos perfectly synchronized up using 2014 technology. I just think that a lot of people are hung up on the idea that kind of, as I said in that podcast, that there can't be anything out there that they don't know and that they are not haven't been told is true. And when that happens, you hit cognitive dissonance, which says that, okay, I have to throw out one of my beliefs. Do I throw out that the TV's lying to me, that all my other Redditor friends are wrong? Or do I throw out that this video is wrong, right? And a lot of people, unfortunately, stick and say, I'm going to stick with my buddies and whatever they're telling me. And, I think that was like highly on display during that interview today.
I think that's part of it. I think there's another thing there. And I'd message these guys because I was watching that and I've watched these different videos and I look at the feeds that someone said and someone put in an awesome quote. I need to pull it up to give him credit, but it was, these videos scare me.
Yeah.
But I need to face the reality of it. Like it was something along those lines. And I was thinking, that's a huge part of this. Some things are just so terrifying, so beyond. I mean, these things are either we have technology that is unbelievably beyond anything we've ever seen in a sci-fi film, right? Like it is absolutely rivaling anything out there in sci-fi right now, or there's something else here, whether it's a shadow dome, bio, whatever, quantum, whatever.
Yep.
There is something else here that can come, take, and do as it will, and we can't do anything about it. That's a terrifying thing. So either you accept that, or you be like, it's got to be fake. It's got to be fake. It's got to be fake.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen people in extraordinary circumstances not able to deal with the reality that they're seeing in front of them. And as far as like explanations go, you can explain away anything anything extraordinary or spectacular can be explained away. Doesn't mean the explanation's correct.
There's a good quote here from Moody Mongol. The only way I would attempt to repro the video quickly would be a high-end flight simulator in dev mode. It's the only thing I could think of to repro things. But he is a AAA game developer that's worked with like Peter Molyneux on Fable and stuff like that. And
that's awesome.
So it's like a noteworthy quote.
He is definitely our expert.
And even that, we're dealing with like nothing that those simulators can do. We've got a satellite footage from this Cyber system, which looks nothing like any simulator out there. And we've got this thermalized electro IR camera from an MQ-1C Gray Eagle too. That's like third person, right? Like on the wing too. So, when we had the Marvel VFX expert, which I think is hilarious, people were trying to cast down a Marvel VFX expert who made Avengers Endgame, Captain America Civil War, and Spider-Man No Way Home. And they're going, no, that guy's opinion doesn't matter. What opinions matters is some YouTuber guy who debunks real DoD classified Navy videos. And I'm just laughing because the reality is that when people overestimate their skills highly, right? And they think, oh, I can do that in a day. I even do this at my job. And I tell people, oh, I'll get that to you in a week, or I'll get that to you in a few days. And then I have to come back. Okay, guys, I need another week. I didn't get this done, right? And that's why the Marvel VFX expert knows what they're talking about, because they've actually done high production, full studios. CGI is the hardest stuff. It's not just a matter of doing it. You've got to do the research in order to know what the camera angles are, what the assets are supposed to look like. And I think the other part from the Top Gun Maverick statement that was made on Reddit, and they tried to oh, it's just a random statement. Well, I mean, he's explaining why it's difficult. You don't need to believe who he is. He's saying that, okay, that the hardest part of that movie is when they have to recreate the speed of the airplane, and they have to cheat that because that's the hardest part to get it to be accurate. And our videos show accurate turn from a 777-200 while in descent, maxing out its capabilities. So, I think that a lot of the details are what kind of sells the videos as being real, that make it extremely difficult. Because of course anything can be faked. Marvel VFX expert says it takes 4 to 6 months, and that's with today's technology minimum, right? And again, the maximum time we have is 72 days. And that's if you believe that somehow Regicide Anon lied on the description, or that description's not, indicative of it when it actually got uploaded to YouTube, not published, etc.
It's interesting, some of the takes of different podcasters. It's not trying to criticize anybody, but like Ollie and I were talking just before this came on, and he made a stunning point, which is weird because it's rare. But he made an excellent point, and it's continually resonated in my head, is that, say this is fake, right? Run hypothetical, say it is fake. Whoever put this out had to have knowledge of Lockheed Martin's system that I guarantee was classified as shit at that point. So what's going on? This is another huge hole. They put it out, and so you knew that this is out because no one else in 2014 knew this thing is recording all skies. We don't even know how many of those things are up there now. This is a big hole, and that would be able to narrow down quickly who had functional knowledge of this, who had the skills to be able to produce it, if it was. But even then, it leads such down a rabbit hole that seems highly unlikely that someone with classification, or someone with the clearance, the skill set, the ability, made this in that amount of time using the knowledge that they already had to break every NDA and national security, to do a fun little video about a tragedy
that we never knew. Somehow we're never going to find the plane 9 years later.
We're never going to find the plane.
Okay, great guess.
I don't know, man. I don't know. There's a lot of passion. Speaking of passion, so I feel like I wouldn't be doing it right if I didn't address one thing. Yeah. There's one particular podcast, again, I'm not trying to do it, but you'll know exactly who it is. They seem to take something personal that was alluded to, but was never talked about, which was weird. What's going on there, man? because he even made a direct response video that was like, "This is very bitchy."
That was really just cowardly for sure. Like, I'm glad that podcaster put a shirt on. At least it doesn't seem like that's normally something they do. But I saw that and I just thought, boy, this is really cringe, because I've been nothing but nice to all these podcasters all the time. Even, you can see when I'm on video with them, I'm nothing but nice to them. And like it got to a point where he's like trying to get on the minutia of who paid for the hotel, but the reality was that like I did, and like, why would I not contact the person? Well, because he was a dickhead in the middle of while I'm in this I'm in this recording with him. Why do I ever want to talk to this guy again? And he's putting me up in some the cheapest hotel he possibly could. I started to put two and two together afterwards, right? When you're rethinking through the podcast and like, why was this guy attacking every argument I had, like every little minutia argument that a lot of the things weren't even consequential to the case, right? And you kind of realize, oh, this was a setup, right? And the reason why he's putting me in the worst hotel possible is because he didn't give a crap. The whole intention was to try to discredit me or whatever. And so it's like, of course, I'm not going to give him any more benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to talk to this guy again. I actually didn't talk to him until the podcast. Like, I really, like, after that, I think I sent 1 or 2 messages, but sent like nothing else to him until that podcast aired. And then, the moment I see the way it's titled and I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be super dishonest. That's when I put out my statement, which was my refutation of the various false claims that were made. And that's what I feel like, what really lit that podcaster off, though, is if you go look at the comments on his own video, which I never promoted. So you can't say that I sent people there. I never promoted it. His own
specifically why I didn't name it.
Yeah, his own subscribers are just ripping him to shreds, right? And I think that what a lot of these podcasters don't realize is that when you come off as dishonest towards people, like they can see through it. And I don't think that they like are self-reflective enough to see how they come off on some of these things, where they don't see that like the world isn't like what they imagine their friends, like give them reinforcement. And I like to comment on Reddit a lot because it's typical. It's like honestly like Redditor syndrome is what I call it, where somebody in my Discord actually really explained it really well, where they said, let me pull it up real quick. What was the example? Oh, yeah, here it is. They have contrarian intellectual persona without the intelligence. Is that, they think that they're the person who's going to be the contrarian person who's going to get it all figured out. And, they don't realize that when they look at it on video, it comes off as like distasteful, dishonest, deceptive, or in a lot of cases, projection as well.
Ashton,
forced. Yeah.
Why do you think they did it the way they did it? Do you think it was it's just like a show trying to make a mockery of you to get more views, or do you think there's something a little bit more sinister involved?
That's a good question, and I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, right? Which would mean that they're just doing it to get more views, right? And I think at least with the first podcaster, it was mostly about that. They're trying to get more views, I thought. But that was part of the reason, too, when I was paying a lot of attention when they're sitting there talking to Jim DiOrio, a former spook, literal FBI agent operative on the phone, putting him on speakerphone in front of me. That's why when I see something like that, I'm writing that person's name down right away, because that's just really suspicious, especially when we're dealing with a situation that is potentially the largest conspiracy of all time. If not the largest, it's way up there, right? It's because people have a lot to lose if this were to come out, right? The government has a lot to lose. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if they would try to, set me up with some interview where the whole intention is to try to discredit me or try to nitpick some aspect of the case. And with that particular podcast, it really felt like what their whole intention was to find one thing that they could focus on, right? And that's how they dishonestly edited the interview as well. They found, if you were to watch it in the actual time in which it was played out, like those things were interspersed mostly throughout the first half of the interview. And, and the people that watched could tell that they were like, then he's like harping on every little tiny thing about that when it's like, okay, let's just move on. We don't need to spend 20 minutes discussing this totally irrelevant aspect of the case. And so that's the part where it's like, you wonder, is this a matter of they're being set up, or are they really just doing this for views? But either way, my approach is I'm just not going to promote your podcast then. And, that's how it'll play out.
There was something really weird. It doesn't necessarily like even involve you when it comes to that podcast.
Yeah.
As far as that guy purely being in this for views is his studio is perfectly set up that when he does clips of himself, it makes him look like he's a guest on Joe Rogan's podcast. That's why that's why he's on that side of the table. It's why that red curtain's there. It's so when he sticks these 10-second clips out, it looks like he's on the other side of the table in Rogan's studio. And if you're willing to think of that, I don't trust you if that's the way you're going to go about trying to make content.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't mind doing a tell-all here, honestly. So
speaking of
oh, go ahead. You can.
Yeah, I was gonna say, speaking of tell-all, I wanted to jump in there. So one of the specific claims he made is that, and see, this is the thing. Like, we've already had you on. We talked to you before and afterwards.
Yeah.
They were making mental health accusations, which I was like, this is nuts. They're like, this guy's not stable. I was like, I've talked to this guy.
Yeah.
Like, that wasn't my read.
We spoke for about an hour after the podcast.
Yeah. Like, so, you know, okay, maybe that's not, and in my own mind, I was like, okay, but you know what? I haven't sat down with him. We haven't had dinner. I don't know. You got to go. I don't know. You know, I met these two guys finally, and I was like, oh, man, that was a bad move on my part. But I love you both. You guys know that. No, so I was just wondering, one of the other accusations that were made were that there was a lot of like talking and backbiting with people that they knew mutually, and it got back to him. And that was his inspiration for making that ranty, fairly cringe video response that, I don't know, man. I don't understand how any way you do a video like that and then watch it back, go, yeah, this is good optics. This is gonna look great.
And that's why I didn't make a response, right? There's no.
That's the perfect. There's no response.
Right? You just let people hang themselves if they want to do stuff like that.
Imagine
like if you're somebody else who's going to go on their show and you see that, like, you're definitely thinking twice, right? Like, okay,
yes,
is this podcaster going to like attack me, or then? And just even watching that interview, like, I imagine after watching that, nobody should ever go on that podcast or show ever again. Like, just let that podcast die the way it should die.
That was a strong one. But so to the point was, like, he made claims that you guys talked to multiple people and threw them under the bus. But you didn't do. I mean, who
am I even going to talk to throw under the bus? Like, I don't even understand that. People ask me about what my opinion is, and sure, of course, I don't have a high opinion of the guy who's obviously trying to like dishonestly attack me and. You know, and then lie about the situation afterwards too. And like, it was so ridiculous. Like if you're in that situation where you're in the wrong, you know, like in this case, the minor aspect that we were arguing over is who paid for the hotel, which I did. I showed my bank receipts online. Like, just apologize. Just be like, hey, sorry, I didn't pay for it. Let me reimburse you. Like, that's the high road. That's what I would do if it's me.
Absolutely.
And instead, he's like, no, I'm going to pretend like I paid, even though it didn't. It's like, okay, well, now you're just being totally dishonest.
It's the fact that he didn't think people knew what a booking reference was.
And if anyone's watching real quick, because I've traveled probably and stayed in hotels and flown more than most people that ever will in their entire lives for my job. You know, when you book a hotel, you don't pay for the hotel. You actually have to, if you're going to pay up front, you have to set them up and say, here, I want you to pay for it. Because otherwise you pay when you show up to the hotel. I don't know. A lot of people don't realize that, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, it was, I figured it was all over the hotel thing. I genuinely did. And me and I had talked about that. Yeah, because he's like, I was mad when I already met him. And then when we heard about the hotel thing, it was like, you're embarrassed.
Yeah.
That's what that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a different thing. But
yeah, no, I don't have anybody to talk smack to. It's not like I went around being like, hey guys, don't talk to this person. It's like, I mean, some people reached out to me and like asked me about it, but other than that, like, I don't care about these people. Like, and again, this is the same as people that I block. It's like, I'm not thinking about these people. Like, I've got other stuff. I work on my own life. Like, I don't know why these people get so obsessed over this stuff, but my life advice to people is let it go.
At the beginning, he said you rubbed him the wrong way at the beginning of the show. What did he mean? But
honestly, this is a guy with no credibility whatsoever. Like, I was the nicest guy ever to him, right? Even I didn't say anything wrong to him ever, not even afterwards. Honestly,
my thing with that bit there is you get a guest that you've invited on your show. You're going to try your best to get along with that guest, and especially if you're planning to try and disintegrate that guest later on in the show, you're gonna play the game for a bit. But he said you rubbed him the wrong way at the beginning of the show.
And I don't
What did he
understand that at
do?
all
What did
because we got there and we hung out for like 2 hours beforehand. I was asking him like, "Hey, should we go over like how the podcast should play out and stuff like that?" No, he doesn't want to do any of that. I'm like, "Okay, well, I'll get my computer set up so we can show stuff, whatever, right?" And like we didn't argue about anything. He calls this FBI agent guy up that we've talked about already like twice. Puts him on podcast. He's asking him about this military base and this other stuff. And, I just thought it was kind of bizarre, but I was never rude to him or anything like
spoke
that.
to the FBI agent before he spoke to you.
And then he's like, he tells me, yeah, I've been talking to this guy, Jim Diorio, and I Google him and realize that he's been on his show. And I'm like, okay, this is pretty weird. And, I don't mention it. And then he puts him on speakerphone, like right there in front of me while we're at the table before we start recording or whatever. And it seemed really irrelevant. He telling me stories about it or whatever. I write the guy's name down because I'm like, this could come in handy later on, especially if this guy for some reason is trying to trap me in this interview, right? So yeah, thank you very much. But yeah, so like, and then the other thing he tells me is that he's like best friends with like James Fox, and that like he knows why James Fox's like career is supposedly being ruined or whatever. There's been this drama about James Fox made this like victim video, and I can't stand these victim videos people make where it's like, woe is me, someone's trying to attack me, blah blah blah. It just doesn't come off as honest, right? Like,
yeah,
if you're doing that kind of stuff, don't you want to keep it as quiet as possible, especially if you're being blackmailed, which is what I presume is happening. I have no idea, but and again, I don't even ask about that stuff. So he says this stuff, he's like, all these things he's telling me is like, oh, James Fox thinks the videos are fake as hell. It's like, okay, man, well, I didn't ask. Like, I don't know, why are you telling me this, especially this is the guy that goes to South America and does interviews with people who say they saw aliens or whatever, which I had respected his work before this. But the reality is, like, I don't respect James Fox's work at all anymore. Like, just based on this idea that, like, anyone who's that closed-minded, that's not somebody who should be an advocate for disclosure, in my opinion. Like, if you're going to be someone who's disclosing potential non-human intelligence on Earth, UFOs, like, you've got to be somewhat open-minded. If you're not, it feels like you're betraying the whole point.
See, that's what I find most confusing about this whole situation with what you've brought up, is because, I mean, fair enough, you've got like some attention with this, but it's not like you are like breaking mainstream media with this every night. I don't get why, because I know I put a post up on Twitter saying that every conspiracy starts with a blurry video and somebody with an out there theory. I don't understand why you haven't just been allowed to have the videos and the out there theory and just exist like everybody else does with a conspiracy theory. I've never seen anything like it.
I think a lot of people mention that. A lot of people bring that up, is that they've never seen anything like this in terms of the division and hostility that's come from just one guy running with his like idea, his story, right, based on the evidence. And I think a lot of that goes back to a post that I retweeted a few days ago, because I saw it and I just thought I almost never retweet other people's posts in general, that are, at least if it's not directly related to the case. And this person was actually somebody who, they retweeted my thing and I retweeted them back. And I just thought that the way that he described the situation was so accurate to what's really happening out there. So this guy, you can look him up there, Nick Walsh. He says, I'm nearly 70, worked in the justice system for 35 years. With so much of that in forensic disorder offender unit. He says, Ashton publishes his findings about MH370. I love the data analysis and find it exceedingly credible. But what it reminds me of is my days managing criminals, and that some people appear to have innate proclivity for attacking something that they shouldn't really be that interested in. Why would these people even bother to comment, much less try to fumble together a low IQ attack of Ashton's conclusions? The only way this happens is if they have skin in the game. They're either paid by somebody to suppress the narrative, or they are part of the original cover-up. I think that explains a lot of what we see, right? Is that there's no reason to attack me unless you've got some skin in the game, right? Because if it's something that you don't care about, if I'm talking about the lizard men or whatever who are coming to take over the planet, like you ignore them, right? You don't give a crap.
For some of the bigger podcast people with voice, I think that is spot on. I think for some people are obviously bots, like some of the ones you see on X, that their accounts they follow no one, have no followers, and they got 30 comments and they're all on your stuff. You're just like, what the hell?
We had to get rid of some box.
Yeah, we did have to. We did have to. Yeah. So it's very interesting in that regard. But I think there's also another thing. Again, it's just, these are scary. These are scary for a normal, normal person who's living your life, and you see that and you're like, that's fake. And then you see this guy come out with evidence that in the back of your mind, you're like, this is sounding right. This isn't okay. This isn't okay. And then anyone gives them any kind of line to hold on to. That's where it is. Nope. I saw Mick West put it. Mick West knows what he's talking about. This is fake. This is fake. This is fake. It's okay. Now that person can sleep.
West knows best.
West knows best. That they are now the apex intelligence and predator on this planet, and everything's okay, and nothing bad's really ever going to happen. They need that normalcy bias to slip back into, and this video shatters that.
100%.
Yeah, even if it's fake for 2014 and no one claimed it, that doesn't make sense to me. That's the thing that it seems like the biggest amount of bullshit is that you make something this phenomenal, then, and you're like, nah, I'm totally going to keep that on the down low. I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm just going to take secret pride, especially now that it's all blown up. You can be like, oh, hey, I did that on there's 2 different Macs that I had, and this is how I did it.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to be like, dude, you're set now. You could be doing YouTube tutorials, and
you can go work for any major studio you want, right?
Exactly.
Like, the corridor crew will sign you up, man. They need you, honestly.
Right now. Hell yeah, they would too.
That's my best counter argument. So like now that's what I just say is like, look, just at this point, the only way to debunk these videos is find the person that made them if they're fake, right? Like this person is about to have a job anywhere they want. They did this better than Banksy original creative thing where they somehow knew what orbs with a forward facing gravity engine would look like. And they knew what this macroscopic phase conjugation, that we see happening to this plane would look like. That's perfectly aligned with physics and all advanced mathematics.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, okay, great. Go find that person. I've had over more ratings this week on my Twitter than CNN's had all week. So, definitely. I mean, if they're out there, and I'm talking like 13, 14 million views, something like that.
Yeah.
Like where they should be speaking up, right? I mean, why would they be silent still? It should be easy to find them. We found the person that leaked the videos because they're real, and we had enough evidence for that. So bare minimum, the debunkers should be able to figure out who's the person who faked them if they're fake.
I have some friends so we already have you scheduled to come on again. This was like an impromptu thing. We saw everything going down. Yeah. I know I sent you a couple messages. I think the other guy sent you messages.
Next time he's having beers with us.
Yeah, it's like, we weren't like, hey, we weren't like, hey, we need to capitalize on your popularity, which we are absolutely doing. We were like,
I give you permission to.
Thank you. We were like, hey man, keep your chin up. Like this is crazy. But for the next time you come on, I've already told these guys, and I think they may have messaged you or not. I have a buddy who works at NASA. I have a couple of buddies that work at NASA and contract for Lockheed. Well, for a subsidiary of, it doesn't matter. They're very smart guys who understand all this stuff way better than any of us. And they've seen your other videos that you've done. And they're like, oh yeah, man, I'll come on and talk to that guy. And I didn't want to bring him on tonight because I didn't want to feel like I'm ambushing you or like, that's not okay. Like, oh, here's this other expert who you guys could, they go back and forth. Or I saw that you had Salvatore on. That was phenomenal. My buddies that watched that, they're impressed. Not that, I mean, these ambiguous people, we've had them on the show before, but they're big brains. And they were like, no, like so when my big brain friends saw it and they were watching it and saw like the temperature differential and they know what they're looking at. And they're like, oh no, that's a superconductive material that is absorbing air and energy as it moves like this. That's what we predict that it would do if we could do this. And they understand why I don't. I've been hit in the head a lot.
Yeah, I wish I was smarter. I mean, I've been trying to catch up on the physics and engineering side to keep up with a lot of these people because, I've always said it's got to be real. Yeah, you really have to. It's wild, man. It's so hard to understand. A lot of it comes down to using the right terminology, which is why you'll see a lot of my terminology advancing as well, where like a part of it's just understanding it conceptually. The other part of it is, okay, how do you explain this to a normie, right? Somebody who was like me like a month ago, like, how do I explain this in terms that laymen can understand, right?
And I think as the explanations come from people that we would like to have on with you, if you're okay with that in the future, like one of them I was talking to, yes. And this is going to be why. One of them, we were talking, I don't know if I can get him on or not, but we were talking, he's like, listen, if that really teleported, that proves that our reality is a projection from quantum space. He's like, that is proof of that. Yep. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, if you're going to move mass, and then he said some other things. And I either didn't do enough drugs or I did too many. I lost the rest of the conversation.
Yeah.
My nose and ears were bleeding. But
not
yeah,
from the drugs.
Maybe. I don't know. It was a weird night. But yeah, they would definitely want to come on. And here's the thing. Again, it comes to whether this video is real or fake.
Mm-hmm.
If it is fake, you've uncovered certain things that people should really be talking about, like, gee, government, especially U.S. government, why are you recording all of the skies at the same time? Why are you actively recording everything?
If it's
everybody's
fake,
okay with this,
it's not as big as it being real, but it's still huge.
This is huge.
If it is fake,
yeah.
If it's like Ollie said, it's not as big. Like, being real means there are proven alternative energy methods that would change everything, greater than anything we've ever understood. It also proves that AI has to exist, because that envelope that it was wrapping it in, you were talking about that sign, I sent that, and they're like, oh no, that's amazing. Like, like, I don't even know why it would do that. He's like, but I don't know. Like, that's their thing. And I know Salvatore's talked about
Pius,
yes. His name translates, interestingly enough, in a lot of weird ways. Yeah, it's unsettling in and of itself. But yeah, like, the amount of hate that you've gotten from mainstream vehicles, the way that they are coordinated, the way that they admit online that they have already previously talked to each other and other entities that have then used their followers to specifically talk, and bots that are using and pushing the same narrative that they themselves are referencing. You know, I mean, I get that I'm a conspiracy theorist, but seems odd to me.
There's a couple of comments I want to mention on that you hit on. Is like, even on Danny's podcast, on the Concrete podcast, you know, he says, well, how much do the videos matter, right? And I actually even came back and said, you know, at this point, they don't even matter that much, because how much evidence we were able to put together just from the videos. I mean, to me, that helps authenticate them as well. It's like, how can we figure out all this stuff if the videos aren't real? Like the fire scenario, that we have these witnesses that all support it. But then, like you just mentioned, like figuring out how the cyber system works. Like, how are we able to figure out how the cyber system works? Like, the only reason why we even came across that is because people said, yeah, well, the satellite should be moving more. And I'm like, okay, we got to go figure out, why is the satellite not moving more? Oh, okay. Well, it's because here's this video from Lockheed Martin where they're scanning the whole Earth all the time. I'm like, holy crap, persistent global surveillance monitoring. Like, they just literally admit what they're doing, right? Like, and so it's wild. You realize, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, this is because it's a computer program. This is why it's 6 frames per second, because it's a huge field of view and the computer's only able to render it so fast, right? And it's like, oh, okay, well, we can explain every aspect of it. And that's the part too, where it's like, okay, even if they're somehow fake now, it's like, damn, look at what we uncovered, which to me makes it impossible for them to be fake.
Did you see Daddy's poll? Did you see
I wasn't really watching
the poll?
Did you?
That was a follow-up trip that Ashton has decided not to go on.
So that was the poll.
Whoa, more of them thought it was real, even in his own podcast. Wow.
In his own podcast. This was at the end of the podcast.
Wow. Yep, he was getting torn up in there in his chat. Yeah,
especially at the end, it got kind of brutal for him, honestly, even by his own chat members. Because, like, again, this goes back to like people not realizing how they come across and then thinking they're coming across well. Where it's like the best thing you can do is just try to be calm and not as connected to the evidence. And he was trying to say that, like, oh, I'm too passionate about it, or I'm too hung up. Like, exactly the opposite. The reason why I'm not upset when people try to like debunk it is because anytime they do, we just learn more about how it's true, just like that cyber system, right? So it's like, I'm so confident that no matter anything comes up, we'll be able to explain it away. You know, it felt like projection when he's pushing that on you, where it's like, oh, well, you don't want to believe this, or you're hung up. It's like, no, I think that's what you've got going on right now, right? Like, you're convinced that your corridor crew guy is like an expert when really he's not, you know? And it's like, that's the real issue, I thought.
You know what your research into this also brings up? It brings up a topic I don't think a lot of people should damn be talking about it. The U.S. government is monitoring all skies at all times. So we have these witnesses that, oh, this fighter saw this here. Cool. What's that satellite info? Look, because I know you got it stored. You can see it. You know, what's the Cerberus footage look like? Yeah. Show it to me from the air. What's going on? You know what I mean? Like, and not only that, you're watching everything. Well, it's missile deterrent, it's guidance. Like, we have those systems. Like, we have that. That's a whole different thing. You don't have to. That's a passive system. You have an active system that is visually monitoring everything, putting it in stereo, so you can make 3D images. I was like, what the hell's going on? What the hell are you people looking for? Because you're just wasting it on the Pacific Ocean, all that space of nothing, just in case a missile's coming that you can then go back, reference the footage, pull, and see. No, your missile detection is going to pick it up and go with it. So it really brings into, why are you watching all of this? Like, if they were just over Europe and Asia, I'd be like, all right, yeah, okay. You're watching everything.
Yeah, they've got satellites that are geostationary, just sitting in orbit, like completely around the whole world. And then they've got these low Earth orbit ones. They don't even show up on the Sibber system, our low Earth orbit ones. And they put even more up there now. Yes. So it's like, they've just got the whole world mapped. The only question is what resolution capability on a certain spot at a certain time, right?
And the why.
Yeah, and the why for sure. So yeah, I think that's probably one of the biggest reveals. I think that's why Kim.com probably posted a picture or that video on his Twitter the other day.
That was huge. Yeah,
I mean that's really big because he's the guy who's like trying to expose government corruption, etc. And that's a really good way to do it for sure. Is, hey guys, I had no idea we would find a video like that. Lockheed Martin just has that on the internet. If you just Google Sibbers, it's like the first video is that video. I'm just going like, man, if I'm Lockheed Martin, I'm not posting this on the internet. That's pretty weird. At the end, it's like, we never forget who we're working for. Wow.
They're scary. They're a scary company.
Yeah, and maybe we shouldn't talk about them that much.
That's exactly what I was going to prove. I think we've hit our quota of Lockheed Martin and various other spooky government contractors.
One other thing I wanted to talk about, too, is the thing you mentioned about the simulation, right? I think that I've harped on this several times, is that my spiritual understanding of the world has increased from learning about science, and I've become more spiritual the more I've understood science, which I think is, a lot of people think it would be the opposite. But faith and science are not contradictory at all, I don't believe. And I think that if you look at that, I came to the same conclusion, is that the double slit experiment and its logical conclusion from that is that we must live in a simulation of sort. Like, it's a video game where you can cheat the game, right? It's like you threw the cheat codes in there. Nope, we can just move from here to here instantly, teleport, right?
Fast travel.
And to me, the only way that's possible is if we live in a construct of some sort. And if there's a construct, then there must be a creator. And I think that that's interesting because I don't think that these videos threaten people who are religious. I think they threaten people who believe that everything that they're told on TV, everything they learn in academia is all there is, right? That we're at the pinnacle of human civilization right now in intelligence and knowledge, but we're really just cavemen that think that we're a lot smarter than we are, right? We just discovered fire and now we think, oh, that must be it.
I would say, like, I'm a Graham Hancock fan to a certain extent, as well as a few other people. Not to go way off the track, but you bring that up, and you're right. The people who put our controls, right, that zeitgeist, whatever, that they have all this locked in, they're the ones actually threatened by the fact that if this is a simulation and we have a creator, they're the ones threatened by their power. So long as we don't have an affirmation of that, they're the ones in control with the trust and the power. Once anything else to the contrary comes out that, oh man, there is something else, they're usurped, right? They're usurped. So they put all these control measures in. And apparently they're watching all the skies at all times with amazing detail. And that was 2014. Who knows what's doing it now?
I think Graham Hancock deserves a little bit of credit too. So I watched the Ancient Apocalypse show on Netflix. I think that's a great show. I wouldn't have called it Ancient Apocalypse.
We know he's Gardner.
We know he's Gardner.
True.
That's the level of show you're on.
He's
right
on
now.
most Fridays.
Wow.
He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yeah, I mean, he seems like a really nice guy. Interestingly enough, I've been thinking about him a lot as I've been getting attacked, because I wonder if the reason why he doesn't get attacked and discredited are for similar reasons, that he's exposing something that they don't want out there. Because all he's doing is going to anthropological sites and pushing the dates back by doing science on them, going, oh, this is deeper, this is older than we thought. He goes to Turkey and he finds these places that are tens of thousands of years old that have basically more complex structures than Stonehenge built out. And you're just wondering, these were not hunter-gatherers that were doing this. This was a civilization that was here, right? Like, how can we pretend like, humanity wasn't focused in living together at this when it was, 20,000 years ago, we can find these structures like this. So I think that the stuff he's been doing has actually changed my perspective of anthropology and human history. And this is just in the last, 6 months or so. Yeah. And this is where, like, the more I've looked into UFOlogy and other stuff like that, including stuff like this, you start to really wonder, like, how have we only been on this earth for 10,000 years or whatever they say human history is recorded as, right? It feels like our human history has to be longer than we imagine it to be. We're just too complex to be that, new. And that's why I like stuff too, like Homo nideli is a break off human species, not human, but Homo nideli is the species of it that apparently goes back like 250,000 years now, right? And now it's like, okay, now we're really pushing human history back, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
I think he's referring to Skunkworks projects. Again, we can only talk about so much of that before people are going to knock on the doors or take out the power or something.
Yeah. But, and did you notice that happened in the interview with Danny? That was actually one of the funniest parts. We didn't play into it too much, but I'm sitting there in the interview with Danny, and all of a sudden the whole power goes out, right? In the middle of the interview, everything. I'm just like, oh, that's weird. Huh. I'm like, does that happen a lot? He's like, oh, it's only happened one time ever in the history of my podcast of like 5 years. I'm like, okay.
No, it hasn't. Yeah. So something weird happened the last time you was on. I spoke to Dave prior to this. Dave,
it sounded like there was someone else on the line.
Really?
This is before we went live.
Yeah, before we went live when we were talking to you
earlier. Yeah. I heard a sound that I'd not heard before, and it wasn't your mic. There was some sort of
talking. It sounded like talking, like from kind of back here, like someone back and quiet.
I don't even know how that's
what was that?
Possible.
Yeah, I don't know. It's weird. Whatever, electronics, right? They do whatever.
Yeah, I had some weird stuff happen to my stream the other night too. My internet just randomly goes out. It had never gone out before. I got like this brand new internet, and then the second part was my fault. I'm not trying to play this up as conspiracy angle, but I end up clicking on allow once when you're not supposed to click on allow. Next thing I know, I have pop-ups flying on my screen. I'm like, oh boy, time to go back and do a system restore.
Alien scientist. Go on, Lee.
I was just going to say, alien scientist put on Twitter the other day that he's had loads of problems with his Macs since he had you on, to the point where he was saying that his computer locked him out of it when he eventually got back into it. His passwords have been changed for various accounts and stuff like that. He since took his Mac back to Apple, and they've basically turned around and said, "Oh." So no idea. Yeah, it's really
alien
weird.
Scientist. Jeremy, he's somebody who I think was highly skeptical of the situation, right? As someone who I think that, for him, he digs into conspiracies. He wants to know that there's a lot of evidence behind them. And I think that's one of the interviews I'm most proud of, because he was skeptical, but if you compare it to the other two podcasters I was just on, it didn't come off as dishonest, right? It came off as honest skepticism.
Yeah. He's a really good dude.
Yeah. And I'm probably going to have him on my own podcast actually as well to have him talk about some of this stuff.
He started out so skeptical with you, but then towards the end, I said this to the boys. I said, Jeremy's kind of like, he's into this. There's something about this case that is intriguing him. And I said this to you, Ashton, when Lee and Dave first showed me this, and I can't remember if I saw it years ago or not. I honestly, because memory, people speak a lot about memory on podcasts recently when it comes to this case, but memory doesn't always serve you correctly. But when we first spoke about this case, I said to both Lee and Dave, I said, I think this is fake. And throughout that podcast, I started to become more and more intrigued in this case. And still now, I'm not 100% if it's fake or not. But even if it's fake, it's a huge story, and that's what people need to realize. But the question that I wanted to ask you, because this is what I don't know, because you've done so much research on this. What did both the pieces of footage come out together, or did one of them come out first?
Yeah, one came out first for sure. So the satellite video was the first one. The
color one?
No, the non-color one. The satellite from above, the black and white one. The one that shows the stereoscopic imagery with the parallax, despite the fact that people on the podcast I was on claiming there was no parallax. I'm like, guys, you can see it shaking back and forth. This is what parallax is. But yeah, that one says
he just didn't understand what you were saying.
No, they didn't have the cognitive capacity.
Well, that's the problem, is that they just believe whatever they're told by their expert, right? They don't actually think about it critically themselves to think like, okay, here's what this means actually, right?
So we
can't afford experts here.
The Citrix session came out first.
Yeah, so that was the first one. And that's why I think that they didn't even plan on releasing the second one, because the first one says received March 12th, 2014. That's 4 days after the event. And that one has published May 19th, 2014. So if that date is real, then this person leaked it within 4 days to the internet. And that makes sense because that would be somebody who had an emotional reaction that they see this and they're like, hey, I got to get this out there right away. Otherwise, no one's going to ever be able to solve the case, right? Before the South Indian Ocean narrative even existed, they put in just enough information to solve the case. We got the stereoscopic view. We can figure out the satellite that was in the area. We'd be able to prove that it's there. They would know that amateur astronomers track all the satellites and they can find the trajectories. They have the coordinates in the bottom left. Like, you've got the coordinates. Like, okay, it's the Nicobar Islands. This is like where they say the plane went, you know, and maybe that was the reason why Malaysia like was still searching the South China Sea. Maybe because this video is out there. Maybe they suspected this video is out there and that, you know, people would be able to figure it out if they didn't divert attention away from where the real issue was. Now, I also think that they had to be told and proven that it was real. So it says source protected in that first one. And it took them like 7 weeks to upload it. So if you imagine, or to publish it, they may have uploaded it and just had it there, but not published it to the public yet, right? They might have to be convinced. Like, this is a UFO account. You have to convince this UFO account that what you're looking at is real video. A lot of people have to be convinced that you're looking down on it. So they might have to be convinced, like, hey, this is real. I'm actually a military person that leaked this, right? And then that might be the reason why they did it. And then the second video, so that video is published May 19th. May 22nd, Regis Adenan makes a brand new Twitter account. Says, watch this before it's deleted. He tags MH370 in there for the first time. That's 3 days after that video comes out. We ignore it. You know, if I'm the person who leaked this and I'm like the Bob Lazar type, I'm thinking, okay, media is going to pick this up. Media is going to be reporting on it. Everyone's going to now figure out that this is MH370. And then the second video gets leaked. We ignore it, right? So they leak, okay, here's the second video. I cropped this drone out of the first video. Now there should be no doubt whatsoever, right? Here's a second video, same exact thing, different angle, drone that was cropped out intentionally. And that one gets has a received date of June 5th, 2014. So like, what, 2-3 weeks after the first one's published. And it has an upload date or a published date of June 12th, 1 week, exactly 1 week after it says received in there. And so that one then is like, there should really be no question anymore as to authenticity. It's like, okay, you've got the second video, perfect angle on the second one. The person has to be an operator because they've put this thermal layer over this electro IR camera. Otherwise it would just be black and white, meaning that they know how to use the software that's built into the camera to set the color custom settings. This was another thing that Nico got wrong, which is like, and Danny was trying to do this too, which told me that he had already seen the Nico video. He's like, oh, this is what thermal cameras look like. And I'm going, dude, this is not a commercial thermal camera off the street. Like, this is an advanced electro IR camera from Raytheon, multispectral targeting. And it has a thermal option to build in over the top of it, which, you know, it kind of makes the detail, you lose a little bit of detail with the thermal layer over the top. But that's what we were like looking at in there. And then you can set those settings custom. So the person, we don't know what they set them to, but, you know, whatever they set them to, all we need to see is the relative heat differences. And so there's a lot of information there. We can see this stuff about the orbs. We saw those trails very clearly, stuff like that.
The reason why I asked you that is because everybody keeps debunking mainly the heat one.
Yeah, the thermal one. Yeah.
So the one with the Citrix came out first. And my conspiracy brain just goes off here because I'm like, what if, I don't know, you must have considered this. What if the first one is the smoking gun, so to speak, and they panicked and they got their top dogs because the guy that was on concrete that they got to debunk it, that knew his shit when it came to CGI. He said, whoever did this is fucking amazing.
Yeah,
you know, he said they are. Now, who's going to be fucking amazing? That's not gonna want to monetize. No, make money off it. That, I mean, it's like the Skinny Bob thing. I like. Me and Lee have spoken about that many a times. He leaded it on his channel before he came over to Alien Addict, and we did a a whole thing about this thing being something that was maybe put out there for certain reasons. I'm wondering if you have considered that second piece of footage could possibly be there to muddy the waters from the first piece that is the smoking gun.
Not necessarily from the exact angle that you're presenting, but I think that you always have the same issue with any time. Like, I think what you're getting at is like, did the government release the second one to somehow lose us off? But problem is they're exactly perfectly in sync, which is really part of the biggest difficulty, because what that means is that you need to create a 3D rendered environment to be able to take both perspectives, and if one of them's real, essentially means that they both have to be real. But the other part of it too is just that, like, what's the story that makes sense, right? Like, so they're trying to convince people that aliens took the plane, right? Like, in our realm, I think that that's stuff that we are open-minded enough to be able to consider. But the normie layman people are never, ever going to believe that, right? And in fact, that's what they keep trying to discredit and claim that I think that aliens zapped the plane or whatever to another dimension. And it goes to show their level of ridicule that if they were to put that out, no one's going to believe the government. If the government comes out and says, here's our video, this is really what happened, it was the aliens zapped the plane, everyone's going to have the same reaction that they were trying to have right now. They're going to ridicule it. They're going to say that, nope, this is a cover-up. The conspiracy is that the government did something to the plane. They shot it down or, whatever else. So that's the problem that I have with a lot of I call it the PSYOP angle, is that it implicates the U.S. government. It doesn't benefit them anyway. So then other people say, well, what if like Russia did it or something, right? And they're trying to implicate the U.S. Well, frankly, I don't care. I'd actually feel better if it was Russia or China doing this, because as opposed to my own government, like, I don't want to consider the fact that my own government's doing this, to be honest with you guys.
It's funny you bring that up. I talked to some of my buddies who do work in government, and they're a good reality check, because I think even the last time we said here, I don't think it's Russia or China, because we would be speaking Russian or Chinese. And I had brought that up to my friends, and they're like, they're like, bro, it's definitely not the U.S. government. Yeah. And I'm like, what? He's like, I'm not saying it's not a U.S. entity or an international corporation or one of these conglomerates or one of these something that's put together. I'm not saying that. He's like, but it's definitely not in the control of the government. And he's like, why? He's like, because the entire world would be speaking English. He's like, our dictators aren't any better than their dictators. Like, they're all the same. It's like, you give them unfathomable power, they're going to use it. And that stuck with me, because these people know that kind of stuff. And it makes me think, honestly, one of the things is, so again, let's just play that, right? Let's say these are 100% legit. It is, in fact, human technology. It was made by people. Best and brightest, scooped out of school by all the military industrial complex of mostly the U.S. and somewhat, other Western allied states. Where did they get it?
Yeah.
Right? Did they just make these leaps? Like, then why are they teaching physics still the way they're teaching it? Because if you're a new person coming out of college, right, this new hotshot engineer who's on this amazing path, and Raytheon's like, hey, I want to pay you $600,000 a year, but you're never going to be able to talk about what you do. It's never going to be going anywhere. But you're going to make crazy money. Can never talk to your wife about it. Can talk to no one about it. And you can never use this in your resume in the future. What is he really bringing to the table? Because all his fundamentals have been learned under X, when you're clearly messing around in the sky with a Y. You know what I mean? Like, it is such a departure from what we know and can grasp and understand, other than like Salvatore, who's obviously brilliant, and people of that caliber. But for the most part, we seem to be behind the curve globally. You know what I mean?
Well, we touched upon it on the last show Ashton came on, didn't we? When we talked about the idea of a breakaway civilization.
Yeah, it definitely feels that way.
Yeah, one thing I would say is that, so I've had several sources, contacts, stuff, people reach out to me. I think some of the most credible information that I've heard is that even a lot of the military doesn't know this exists. And that can help explain why you might have somebody reach out to you and say, no, this isn't us, but they don't even know. They're not in the know.
Yeah.
It's such a small group of people within the military that even know about this technology.
Oh, no,
I don't even know if the leaker even knew, honestly.
No,
I think the leaker thought this was UFOs, right? And then they're like, oh, this is actually our tech, right?
Yeah, to be totally clear there, I'm not saying that these people have an insight. I'm just saying it's just a psychological assessment. They're just like, listen, the monsters we work for are no different than the monsters everywhere else. These people all act the same.
And what I've also learned
Maybe
too is that
$10.
it's not necessarily about having the academic credentials. It's about what are you out there experimenting and doing. When I watched Jeremy Reese's Alien Scientist panel with Salvatore Pais and all those other, like probably some of the smartest minds on the planet, you realize these are people out there actually doing the stuff. They're doing the experiments, right? What
Boots
I've been
on the
told is,
ground.
what I've been told is you go out and you do the wrong experiment or the right experiment, however you want to look at it, and then you get a knock on the door that says, "Hey, you're part of the DoD now. You're part of the government now."
You're part
Or
of the
DOE.
DOE.
Yes, we saw that too. I honestly do think the DOE is where it's being hidden. Department of Energy. That was also what I'd heard from UFOlogy before I had people talking to me. And that's
We
like
should
the
be
most
careful.
logical location. Yeah, we have to be very careful about some of this.
We should be careful because Grush has been hitting about it earlier. And
well, if anything happens, check into the DOE, guys. You know the DOE is the place.
This is the kicker. There is no, I don't know what people do or don't know. There is no checking into the DOE.
No, yeah, that's what I've heard as well. If you even try, they already have contingencies set up to hide everything, and that they will make sure even an official inquiry will not be successful.
Dude,
what I've been heard.
The smallest functions they do are literally code word classified. It's like, well, what are you looking for? Do you know the code word of the specific program? Well, no, I'm doing a FOIA. If you did it, well, that's, or dudes with guns and badges you've never seen before show up at your door and they know everything about you. They're DOE scary. DOE scary. And if we do have, like, if we recovered ancient technology or alien technology, what's going on? There it is. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, I was going to comment to that point too, real quick, because I think you made another good point. Is did we get here naturally, or did we have some help? Right. So I've been asking everybody that as well. My opinion has been that we're looking at reverse engineered tech, that we got some help, right? That but I don't know that necessarily means that, aliens came down and we stole their ship. I think it could be that we found it archaeologically as well, right? It could have been something that we uncovered from hundreds of thousands of years ago. And it's hard to tell at this point, especially if we have been reverse engineered, that we have no idea how much of the stuff out there is ours versus how much of the stuff is non-human intelligence. But what I've also been told is that after the Manhattan Project, we didn't just stop researching and stuff, right? We figured out how to split the atom, and it's not like we were done. It's like, oh, okay, guys, wrap it up. We dropped a bomb. Now it's like, okay, what have we been doing for the last 80 years, right?
The other thing no one takes into account, they talk about, other than some specific, like, damn, I didn't want to keep saying Lockheed Martin, but Lockheed Martin or Raytheon or whatever, do they have their own facilities? Absolutely. Are they secure? Somewhat. Where are the best, like where Area 51 is on Department of Energy land? Did you know that?
No, I did not know that, really.
The Air Force leases it from them. It is, and the reason it's Department of Energy is because they're like, those are military guards. They're not. They're contractors. They're contractors who are federally authorized to do whatever's necessary, and in their protocol, like the people who, so like transporting nuclear materials, right? You could transport anything. No one knows what's in that truck. No one even knows where it's going, and the way that they do things, the compartmentalization and the way it's stuck together. As far as we're talking about like older things, right? Like after World War II, we took 1,600 that we talk about, in paper clips, 600 of which were scientists, 1,000 of which were their intelligence personnel around the world. Well, those scientists came here to our nuclear program, and compartmentalization didn't stop. Build out on these facilities, and the U.S. national lab system mirrors that of what was going on in Germany at the time. And it's only expanded exponentially. And one of the first things they did was they bring all the contractors onto the facilities. So even if you get onto a DOE facility, even if you're not going in any buildings except the DOE building, because you don't have clearance to go to that building.
Yeah.
You have to get approved. Like they're definitely they know what's going on. They're the one, like everyone's like it's the DOD, it's the Air Force, it's the Army. And everyone's like, well, the military doesn't know. I believe that. The DOE is so outside of everyone's, like, they're the ones who control all the nuclear material, even in nuclear warheads. They're the ones who control the physics packages and triggers and assemble and disassemble and transportation and security. Diego, the nuclear refilling facility out there, that is a DOE controlled site out there. Like,
Diego Garcia, that one? Is that what you're talking about?
So the facility out there, the Diego Garcia, that the UK owns, that the American Navy has, their nuclear refueling material, that's not Navy controlled. That's Department of Energy controlled, because Department of Energy owns all nuclear assets.
Let me make some notes. We're going to need this information.
So double check on that. Yeah. Department of Energy is definitely the one to look into that everyone ignores.
Yeah.
Even Grush on Rogan was talking about it. He was dropping those hints
Really?
from on high, which I thought was interesting. Yeah.
What confuses me about the idea of this being human tech is that even when we find out about like declassified programs, you can kind of like retroactively trace it back and find that there's been like consumer tech which is dribbled down, which has been like like watered down aspects of this. Where so like we said, this would be such a huge departure that it skipped the process of this dribbling down into society.
Yeah. And so what I've heard on that, that's a really good point. You guys, I love talking to you guys. You guys are so knowledgeable about everything. More knowledgeable than me for sure, but
not from me.
I've got contacts
definitely not for me
that I think that are pretty connected. I'm not 100% sure. You can never know if you can trust people entirely, but I like to trust people based on the information they tell me. And the way that I hear this works is that when you go to the lab or wherever you're at working for the government and their secret projects, that's all behind closed doors. But you can do your own versions of some of this experiments, in your house, in your own lab, that's not behind closed doors. And then you can commercialize some of that, patent it. And I think this actually goes to what Salvatore Pais did. Now, instead of him personally doing it, he patented it under the Navy. And his argument for that was that he didn't want to profit off of it. And he didn't want there to be like commercial entities able to profit off of it, able to set the price points, et cetera, on that type of technology. Which, if true, I think that's pretty noble. But that's how I've been told that it goes down. My guess is you can't bring all of it out, right? And they control what you're allowed to bring out as opposed to what you're allowed to keep back. And now, when we're talking about this type of technology, I think the implications are so large for what it's capable of doing that's why it seems like it's just that far advanced, like it hasn't dribbled out. Because once this like room temperature superconductivity dribbles out, there's no holding it back anymore. Like it's going to just reshape the whole world. And that's my opinion.
I think your opinion's spot on. And from what I know from my friends who work in these kinds of fields, like the assembly and a lot of the meetings will happen in secure facilities, but then they have offsite where the machining is done, where this part is made. And sometimes they contract it out to a contractor to contract it out again to make this bolt for this hatch, for this lever. And then you're like, why are we making a 16-foot thick steel door with these hinged counter levers? Like, this doesn't make sense. What's that going on? We need it to seal flat, like down. So it has to come up. So we're going to have to put a screw in there to, what are you keeping in? I don't want to know. But yeah, so the thing is, there's so much secrecy and so much hidden that the reality is the industrial military complex in itself is a breakaway civilization. They have endless funding and all that. The what?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you guys see my poll from last night before I went to sleep? I posted this poll and I actually asked my live stream chat as well, which was if this technology had the capability to blow up the entire planet, would you still be okay with disclosing it? Or disclosure in general? Like if UFO disclosure means we get to technology that can blow up the whole planet. And I think most people are still okay with it because they say, okay, well, we've got nuclear weapons, whatever. But I think the part that people miss is it's not just that the governments of the world have nuclear weapons. It's if you give a terrorist who's a suicide bomber a weapon that can blow up the whole planet and kill us all, are you still okay with that risk, right?
Someone's going to do it.
Question, because someone's going to do it, right? That's the reason why I think they hold it back. I don't think it's even just a matter of society breaking down. I think that they hold it back because they're afraid of literal doomsday weapons that will destroy our whole, civilization from just an individual. And that's what I would challenge everyone to think of. This is the question I'll ask every single UFO disclosure person that I talk to. So that's how I'll gauge their reaction and how deep they're really thinking about the implications of this. And that's what I struggle with the most too, is where I think you look at someone like David Grush on Joe Rogan, and I was watching part of that. And every time I see him stop himself, I keep thinking about that question in the back of my mind. Like, if you're in the military and you know the real implications of this, like you really don't want to let that get out, right? That's the thing that's going to put you in jail. That's the thing that we're trying to keep secret. That's the thing where you hear these people talk about, this is so huge and, we can't tell you, but it's so huge. I keep thinking about that. Like, man, what if that's the capability, right? It's scary.
Yeah. I mean, if you can teleport a small moving, I wouldn't call it a comet, but an astronomical body that we're aware of moving through the solar system. Cool. Let's portal it from here to, 400 miles above our enemy.
Yeah.
How big does it need to be? City bus? We can find that.
Oh yeah.
It was act of God. Nobody saw it coming. Sorry. Yeah, it's terrifying. Not just that, but like the energy required, man. It would change the economic. This is actually part of it. If they do have it, I got to be honest. There's a huge streak in me that wishes that they would just do a better job keeping it secret, because the world economy would shatter.
100%.
It would shatter overnight. Like we would have to restructure.
So another interesting point is that in Salvatore Paius's paper that I posted about, this was right before Kim.com like retweeted me, high frequency gravitational waves. He kind of goes into some of the implications, and I had read this before and I missed this part, but he says at the disruption point, energy may be amplified to such a high degree as to generate a space-time curvature singularity, leading to the total destruction of a planetoid. And it's clear when you read between the lines here that he's talking about destroying the whole planet with this technology. Not just an asteroid, because you could scale it up. And now what's the difference between an asteroid and a planet? Just size. So I asked Bob Grenier this, and I go, are you afraid this technology could destroy the planet? He goes, not just the planet. We can destroy a whole sun with this technology, right?
Yeah.
And that to me then makes me wonder, okay, we might even be talking about being able to create our own Big Bang with this kind of technology. So that's what I really challenge people with, is that it can be very scary. It's like, yes, we can get new power sources, which will completely reshape the economy. I mean, the Middle East probably has the biggest to lose. And they would have to reshape all of their, energy economy and go towards a different direction. But everybody has a lot to lose.
Everybody has a lot to lose. Yeah, it's, and the other aspect of that, like if the teleportation is true, and what my smart friends and what Salvatore and other people I know you've talked to, because you've referenced it here a few times, that this is a projection from a quantum place, and that's that terminology I'm using I know is wrong. I'm just trying to illustrate a point that someone can see, like, this is being stunned because people are like, oh, it's ones and zeros. Like, no, we're real, we're flesh, but we're a 3-dimensional being that could be encapsulated in an 11-dimensional space, and we're a damn TV show for somebody, as far as we understand, who can watch everything beginning to end at once. So when you start looking at that, and again, it comes, like you said, spirituality, and you're coming to these other things, that gets scary. So like, oh, by the way, we have unlimited power. Oh, and your interpretations of gods and beings and demons and things you talk to in dark places, all that shit's real. You live in a reality you weren't even aware of. And we take advantage of the principles of that reality to be able to zip around,
even back to the idea of the Hancock thing of maybe civilization's been around a lot longer. And this is stuff that we've found in some sort of archaeological dig. If it turns out that like human histories maybe like, or what we're looking at now is like the history we're living in is maybe like hundreds of years old, and not like the thousands and thousands and thousands of years old that we think it is, because we keep going through these resets over and over and over again. Can you imagine how hard it would be to motivate people to become a society, like a workable society, if we knew that we get to a certain point and there's an expiration date on it, and we've got to start the mission all over again?
I wonder about that a lot, honestly, especially after watching Graham Hancock's thing about it, where it's like, I wonder, it's part of the reason why our human history doesn't go much further back, because there's been some type of reset event. And this is going to probably reveal my nerdiness or whatever, but I like a lot of Japanese animation ever since I've lived overseas. And one of my favorite ones is one called Gurren Lagann. And the interesting part about this is that it's humanity, or they call them the spiral races. Think of it as humanity or whatever. They are kept underground off the surface, and they are suppressed. And what happens is, after they reach a certain level of technological advancement, these other beings, the anti-spirals, come out of nowhere, basically just using like magic technology, teleportation. They just materialize out of nowhere and basically just begin to wipe out spirals. Like, they use their most powerful technology. Think of it as like this quantum technology that we're talking about. They just use the technology and just wipe everybody out, reset them back to their base point, and then this just creates the cycle over and over and over again. I keep thinking about that more and more as I've been digging into this science, where I'm like, God, that might be what's really going on here. That's what creeps me out the most. Yes, it was just this sci-fi anime, but that's the one that kind of resonates with me the most in terms of what we might be dealing with here. Like, all of a sudden, I'm just waiting for the anti-spirals to materialize out of the sky and just start destroying our cities like in an instant.
That would be a great reset.
Yeah. It's like
That would be a
Independence Day on
terrible
steroids.
reset.
Yeah, I think
I can see
Pretty
Ollie's
great
like sitting
wrong
here,
there.
Ollie's brains churning about this. Yeah, check that one out. You should check, that's a great anime, by the way.
One of the bots we had started to make some comments about your opinions during COVID.
Oh yeah.
Which Lee immediately fucking jumped on, which I found was quite well, because we had to do another show basically to talk about some of our opinions during COVID, some of the stuff we didn't agree with, and I didn't know if the bot was what the bot was telling us was true, but you on your opinions on face masks.
Yeah, so people found a GoFundMe that was for a lawsuit, which people can go find out there. I mean, you can Google all lawsuits out there, and so I actually was talking about this on my stream the other night. To be honest with you, I actually voted for Gavin Newsom. I lived in California once upon a time, and after when COVID started happening, I didn't like what was happening. The biggest thing I had an issue with was this rise of masks, that they wanted healthy people to be wearing masks outside. So they put in this edict or governor order or whatever it was. I can't remember the official name of it, but that like basically everybody who was outside in public spaces had to wear a mask, right? And so that's why you had this mindset of everyone saying like everywhere they go have to wear a mask. I don't mind if I go to a store and they're like, hey, you have to wear a mask. I mean, that's their place of business, right? It turns out that most people didn't feel that way when you go to their stores, but they felt like that it was this order that you had to do. So I was actually on part of the team that was trying to collect signatures to recall Gavin Newsom, because he was out there eating dinner at these expensive places with all these other elite people. All the restaurants were shut down. I mean, California had one of the more harsh shutdowns of everybody. We had like our parks, the dog parks were closed. It's like you've got the dog park closed outside. It just got a little bit ridiculous in my mind. Like
we fenced off kids' play areas.
Yeah, the play areas those were definitely fenced off with caution tape all around them, right? I'm just looking at it like, guys, we're losing our minds here. So I was on this campaign to recall him. I talked to a lot of people that were, I just like talking to normal people. So I talked to people that didn't agree with me politically, people that did agree with me politically. We collect these signatures, and I was working. I actually wrote most of the lawsuit myself. I found a guy who was a lawyer who was like, give me a discount. Like, I don't know what he told me at least he was giving me a big discount, but reality is I spent far more than what I collected from from the GoFundMe. And a lot of those people that donated were people that I was out there collecting signatures with, like just of their own volition, being like, hey, I'm going to share this with all my friends. We support you, whatever. Honestly, a lot of the support feels very similar to the support that I've been getting now recently, but I never felt very comfortable collecting money from other people. I want people to have their own money, especially if they need it. Like, I don't want people giving me money. Like I have another job. I'm not like rich by any regards, but I do fine. So the fact that was just about collecting it. Now, what happened with that is that the mask issue just got like hyper politicized after that. I mean, I wrote that lawsuit, started writing that. The COVID stuff happened March 2020. I was already writing it in April of 2020. It didn't finally we didn't get it submitted until like June of 2020. But this was early on. And even I thought like, oh, this mask thing will go away, right? But I'm going to write this lawsuit and be like right on top of it so that I can, get it right away. Because I personally still believe that it is illegal to make a healthy person wear a mask out in public. To me, that's quarantining someone who's not sick. And this is what I put like in my facts on the lawsuit. I put I'm a healthy.
We're being
American,
factual,
right?
YouTube. Don't get your knickers in a twist.
They're definitely going to get their knickers in a twist.
Oh yeah. So I put in there like as a factual statement. I'm a healthy American, and therefore it's a quarantine on me to have to put this mask on. People say, well, why is it a big deal? If it's not a big deal, why do I have to wear it? Right? Like so. Again, I didn't care that much. I mean, I work in healthcare, so I've worn lots of masks, part of my job, and being in healthcare facilities, they were required for up until recently, actually, up until like about 6 months ago or a year ago, they've been required in every healthcare facility I've been into. And I don't want to talk too much more about that, but what I will say is that it's not as unified in that world as what you would think in terms of people supporting of those types of policies. Behind closed doors, you'll find that people have much more diverse opinions than what you would imagine listening to the media. And I stepped away from that. Like the lawsuit was dismissed. It was dismissed by a judge named Cynthia Brachant. And she was the same person that actually dismissed the lawsuit against Rachel Maddow when she was suing OAN sued her for libel when she said that they are literally Russian propaganda. And that same judge in that case ruled that no one could believe that no one would take Rachel Maddow's statements as any statements of fact, that was just entertainment, which is funny because a lot of people use that argument against Fox News personalities, but the same judge that ruled against my case said the same thing about Rachel Maddow while she was making libelous statements about OAN news. So that's just a little fun side story for you. Once we got dismissed, I stepped away from it, didn't collect any more money for it. It was very expensive. I didn't want to put any more of my money in it. And I also lost a lot of faith in the judiciary. I felt like a lot of these decisions are activist decisions and not decisions that are based on the facts. And again, it got so political. I don't care if people want to wear masks. I'm not going to I've literally never said anything about anybody wearing a mask in my life.
I just find it fascinating that they attacked you on that.
They were looking for anything, no, it actually makes total sense.
I think it was funny that they tried to attack you on that, to me, which means if they'd have listened to anything I've done over the last 3 years, they would have known that was not the way to go about it.
Yeah,
they were unaware of this show.
Well, that's what a lot of people tell me too, is they're like, like a lot of people will comment and be like, this just makes me like him even more. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I was even telling like some of my friends, like, man, I could even just like come out against this more and lean more into it. And I bet I would get even more popular. But again, I don't do that because it's not what this is about. This is just about MH370. It's not about politics. It's not about what side you're on.
The externalities of what you're doing are about all of those things, though. The externalities of what you're exposing are absolutely politics, control. I mean, that's what a mask is. It's another thing that the people who lord over us try and control. Some places more successful. California, yeah, more successful. Here in my state, nope. Nobody did anything. No.
You go to the rural areas, and all of a sudden, it's a completely different story, right?
Yeah. Not even that rural. Like we live outside of metro areas, sort of. For our state anyway. That's right. And yeah, man, it's just there's different mindsets, right? There's something in certain states, certain areas, a mindset of they want to be told what to do, they want to be told what to think. It is comfortable and secure. And we've had a lot of and I'm not trying to call anyone out. I'm just saying a lot of people like that got tired of the situation we're talking about and have been moving to my state. And one of the number one complaints is they're like, there's not sidewalks everywhere. No, there's not. Well, we should have that. No, we don't need them because that's more taxes.
Yeah.
Walk on the road. What if I get hit by a car? You should pay attention.
Personal responsibility.
Yeah, I feel like you're putting a lot of these like security that everyone else owes you instead of you just, not walking in front of a car. I don't know.
That was kind of a thing too, and I won't talk too much more about the politics and what have you in the pandemic situation, which is not much of a pandemic, but the situation was that, if you're the type of person that thinks everybody else has to adhere to your sense of safety, then maybe you just should stay home, right? Like you'd hear a lot of this stuff too, where people are hypocritical and say things like, oh, well, I want to go out and go to the amusement park, but enough people aren't wearing masks or something. It's like, well, then don't go if you don't feel safe, right? Like
don't go.
And I had these kind of arguments with my family too about, whose responsibility is it, right? And I think that everybody wants to push it out on other people. When it comes to America and our Constitution, the way it works is your rights end where mine begin, right?
Correct.
So, and as long as you adhere to that, then you will always be consistent and you'll never be a hypocrite, which is, you can do whatever you want as long as you don't infringe on my rights to do whatever I want. And that where that boundary exists is where I get to do what I want and you get to do what you want, and you can't make me do something that you want me to do. That's how, and I think that I've tried to be consistent on that in all my views, which probably is what, makes me like not very popular with either side in some cases.
Ashton, would you debate, and this is not me setting up a show, though it can happen on here, but would you debate Mick West?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would. That seems like that's been trying to get set up behind the scenes. I think the only issue that I have with that is like I try to imagine what he's going to say, right? And the way I imagine this playing out is we pull up the VFX debunk, which is Mix West's coup de grace debunk, right? And just like it happened on the Danny Jones podcast today, you know, I just go, okay, as a statement of fact, these things don't match. Tell how many pixels match. Mick West won't answer the question. He'll say, it doesn't matter how many pixels match. It's too close to be coincidence or something, right? And then, or he'll just say, oh, they do match, and he'll just keep repeating the assertion.
We're
not going to really get anywhere.
We're talking about
the frame thing, or
Mm-hmm.
the other one where there's two frames that they claim are the similar, but they don't tell you that they like used a bunch of contrast modifications and whatever. And even after that, you can overlay them exactly, and you can see that they aren't the same, and there's differences. And we'll just get in a bunch of that, where then he'll just keep repeating the false assertion. Yes, they match. Yes, they match. Right? Like it's not going to be an intellectual powerhouse where he's going point by point through the evidence. And then I'll say stuff like, and I don't even mind putting all my cards on the table. I hope he's watching, and he can even hear what I'm going to say to him ahead of time, so he's ready. Is I'll say, well, what do you think happened to the plane? And he won't be able to answer because he doesn't want to put himself up to the same level of scrutiny that he wants to apply to others. This is what debunkers do a lot. And again, people who are watching learn from this, is that when the debunkers try to debunk you, push it back on them. Tell them, hey, what do you think? The answer that you'll always get every single time, I don't know. The only thing that you have to tell them is, okay, you have to tell me what you think. The only answer you can't say is you don't know. Because if you're going to level this level of scrutiny on me, like you think you know all the answers, then go ahead and present me a different story. And they don't want to put themselves up to the same level of scrutiny. He's not going to say, oh, I think it went to the South Indian Ocean, because I've already got my list of evidence that proves it didn't go to the South Indian Ocean, didn't crash there. There's no chance. Right. So that's the like kind of why it's like, what's the point of doing this argument? I'd rather just not give him any further exposure and just kind of let it play out, because our growth is increasing. Right. I have more followers than Mick West does on Twitter now. And he's been on TV. I don't even know how many times. Right. I've never been on TV. So the part for me is like, we don't really need to debate him, but if we want to, sure. But that's how it's going to play out in my mind.
Yeah. Or they'll edit it after the fact.
The interesting thing, though, what you were saying about the explosion VFX, which they seem to stick on quite a lot, and it only made me think about it before we came on this show, because I was in the shower and therefore covered in water. Because you were talking about the idea that like an explosion, you know, it's a circle. And even just I was messing around before we came on here, and I took two random like water drops and I stuck them in into Photoshop, and really quickly matched them together. So yeah, to the point where I think if I spent more than 5 minutes trying to do it, and I looked at a load of different water droplets, I could find two pictures that matched to the same degree as that VFX does with your video, or with the MH370 video. And I don't think people might realize just how similar things like that like occur. You know, it's if you drop water, those splashes look almost identical every time.
Yep. And they say, I mean, this is part of the reason why people early on were trying to debunk it, but before that even came up, they were trying to debunk it with water drops, ink droplets, supernova. It looks like all these other things, because they're all dispersion patterns that, you know, it's just a matter of finding one similar. And then people go, well, it's too close to be coincidence. You can never find, this would never happen in nature. But the reality is it does happen in nature. We just listed like 4 different things. They happen all the time in nature. And they're all prosaic. Go ahead.
What did the guy say in concrete about the CGI? He said it was excellent.
He said it was excellent.
So if it was so excellent,
but they mess
why
up.
Why use a piece of 90s stock?
Yeah.
Is that the Easter egg?
Yeah. No, that's funny, because that's what a lot of people argue too. Is like, oh, so they made these perfect videos, and then they were like, oh, you know what, guys? Time to load up our low quality 2-dimension 90s video game effect and slowly move the pixels around one by one. And oh, by the way, we don't have anything to compare it to. We're just going to blindly do this, like, and oh, there it is, perfect. We've got a perfect endothermic event. Like, just doesn't add up.
It was the same as the repeat in frame thing as well. That really confused me, because I didn't see why there would only be one repeating frame. Oh, sorry, 2 repeating frames. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah. And that one, and that was apparently an old debunk as well, that they're trying to rehash these old ones now as well, because they're realizing that the debunk attempts are falling apart. And yeah, that one, there was actually a really good rebuttal to that by someone who's not even one of my followers, who's actually arguing with Mick West in his own thread, telling him, and I'll just pull it up and read it to you guys here. Because I laughed and I'm like, oh, this guy's not even my follower, and he's just shredding Mick West with this, with his own debunk. Let me pull it up and read it off to you guys here. So this guy says, if you take two very small samples of very homogeneous compressed video and then adjust the contrast, the brightness, the scale, you will get pixel patterns which match. You've crushed all the data to such an extent that everything trends towards whatever your settings you've applied. The two original frames are not the same. The noise patterns are not the same. The orb placement's not the same. The reticle placement is not the same. The IR sensor overlay is not the same. His debunk quite literally is ignoring the forest for the trees, which he has hand selected and culled until only identical trees remain. Kind of to your point that you were just listing. And then he shows the two without the alteration. And somebody as well today sent me another one because I have a feeling this is going to come back up again. So I'm collecting all the evidence to just prove this two identical frames thing is total nonsense. And there was another thread that I think was just from a couple of days ago where someone in the replies compares all the different frames with the different settings and shows that on like 4 different ways they're not the same frame, that there's differences in the way the camera or the plane looks on one of them, the background interference doesn't match. And I had looked frame by frame and I could tell just immediately at a glance that the interference in the background doesn't match. So I don't know. It's very frustrating because you've got these people who are like, I just have to call them cultists because that's the word for it. Cultists of Mick West, who like, they just take whatever he says down as gospel and they can't critically think and think for themselves. They just repeat these false assertions that, oh no, they match. And I show them the evidence that they don't. And kind of like on the podcast today, I show them the evidence and you can just watch their brains, like the cognitive dissonance just going off. Like,
it's the illusion of knowledge.
They're similar, they don't match.
Yeah, it's the illusion.
Yeah, they're similar, and that's an opinion, right? Is that okay? I think that they're similar, right? Versus as a statement of fact, they don't match, not 100% now. And then that's why I always ask people how many pixels match, right? And that's why I would say probably on the duplicate frame thing too. Okay, how many pixels match? What's the percentage? I mean, if these people are so good with VFX, they should be able to run a program that says, okay, here's how many pixels match. Here's the percentage of matching. And the reason why they don't do that is because it'll be shockingly low. It's not going to be 95%. It's not even going to be in the 90s. It's going to be like 50% pixel matching. And that goes to show how much work you'd have to do to modify it from one to the other.
The other thought of this is that, okay, so they're filming these planes and then that part was digitally added in. Okay. They were still watching the plane. So where'd it go? We're obviously monitoring everything. We have hydrophones in every single ocean. We hear everything. We see everything, which should really freak everybody out. I mean, let's just be real about that. That should bother everybody.
No, I agree. That's the other part too, right? And that's what I said on the podcast, is that I think I was watching it again. I couldn't remember how much stuff I said, but I think I hit every single point. And it's like, okay, let's just hypothetically say that this thing matches this VFX, which it doesn't, but let's just say it does. That's still MH370 on 2 different videos, right? So you've got a lot more debunking to do here. Like where's the plane? We didn't find it 9 years later. It's not like it's 2015 where it's like, just wait another year till we'll find it in the Indian Ocean. Like, no, we gave up the search like 5 years ago. Yeah. Like what's the deal here, right?
I don't know, man. The hate, the personal hate that you have generated with this is unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Yeah, like even just reading comments from people who aren't bots, right? People who are real things. And you're just like, man, these people are so invested. And it's either challenging their sense of reality in the world, which is weird because a lot of these people follow these other, esoteric and strange topics. You think you'd be more open to something else. And they are in fact not.
That's the part that scares me the most is that like a lot of the people that are attacking me are like, they're into a lot of esoteric stuff. And that's how I refer to it. I don't like to call it the woo or whatever, because I personally respect other people's beliefs and opinions on whatever they want to have, and I like listening to some of them talk, but it's like, people feel like they should be the last people who are attacking me from a personal perspective over this. Like, it's kind of just bizarre. But the thing that I always say is like, I'm not out here to make friends with other people. That may sound kind of mean spirited, but I'm just out here to solve the case, right? And I think in order to do that, you have to come up from it from an objective standpoint where I'm not trying to be buddies with people, to have my opinions based on people who are my friends. I think you saw a lot of that today in the podcast. where the podcast I was on is like, they're trying to defend the other podcaster who's their best friend. They literally admit it in the chat that, oh, this person was my best friend. And, and so is Nico from the Corridor Crew is my friend. Well, that makes you unobjective. That's what makes you biased. That's what makes it able to not see objective reality. So I am never basing my opinions on people who are my friend. In fact, some of the people that supported me, they were some of the people that got blocked early on because they kept coming in my DMs trying to tell me, oh, this is what it has to be. This is what it has to be. And I had to tell people, like, look, I have to set a rule and I have to treat people equally. And then people will come back to me and they say, why would you do that to me? I supported you. I was one of your biggest supporters. Well, again, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to make friends. I'm not doing this because I want to be on agreeing with everybody. I just follow the evidence, right?
Yeah. Ashton, we've had friends in our ears telling us to do this, do that. So, like, you shouldn't listen to this guy. You shouldn't blah, blah, blah. We do our own thing. Alien Addict is completely different to anything out there because we speak as a group of friends and we generally just into it.
We're never getting that government.
That's why I like you guys, man.
We keep trying. We keep telling them, damn it, we are for sale. Cut us a check. We'll do better than all these other people. Guaranteed. Just kind of let us know what's going on, right? I mean, that's all that matters. We're never going to get it.
I also think it's odd that nobody's like repurposing your research either, because it would make total sense for me if say Jeremy Corbell, for instance, was to do a weaponized on this and say, right, this Ashton guy's done all this thing. Now listen, I don't agree with him that it's human tech. I think this is advanced alien spaceship. This is a whatever. But none of them are. It's the same with Glenn Greenwald, who got involved in the sort of pylon over the weekend as well. And
he sure did, didn't he?
Yeah,
Glenn Greenwald did.
Oh yeah. The Black Vault.
Oh, you're thinking of that's not Glenn Greenwald. That's the other Greenwald, John Greenwald.
John
Greenwald,
there it is. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, John Greenwald already hated me too,
they get the Glens and Johns mixed up.
John Greenwald, I forget what he said, but I had reached out to him a while back early on about helping with Freedom of Information requests. He didn't respond. And then I can't remember. He got into my replies somehow. I can't remember the exact thing, but he was trying to dunk on me with memes. This is like a 40-plus-year-old who's trying to put memes in my replies. And he ended up getting dunked on, and he just got really angry and then blocked me. And so I ended up blocking him back. And then I ended up seeing like a couple of weeks ago that he was like promoting Mick West's VFX debunk. Like, how are all these adults not able to see through that these VFX don't match on a frame? Like, yes, they're similar, but this is the part where it's like, if you're somebody, again, who's for disclosure, somebody who's trying to claim that you have this credibility, that, you are a free thinker or whatever, like, you shouldn't be going to Metabunk website to get your opinions. Like, figure it out yourself, right? Come up with your own opinions, be original. And those people, I see that doing that. I saw Jeff Wise doing that. When I saw Jeff Wise go to the Metabunk website, I lost all credibility I had for that guy, or all respect I had for him. It's like, dude, you are an investigator at MH370. You're going to Metabunk to be told what to think about some videos? Like, geez, man.
I think the most interesting thing that was revealed, right, all this information aside, was the connections that all these people share.
Yeah.
The deep connections where they're talking about it in chats, and that they're emailing, and that
texting one another for sure behind the scenes, right?
You guys control a lot of the narrative that people believe in this alt media woo-woo crazy UFO world. I mean, listen, we're all conspiracy theories. That's what we're here at. Fundamentally, we are conspiracy theorists. We're believing in something that we're trying to extrapolate from information that we're able to pick up. God, not as much information as you and the Redditors have put together. That's phenomenal. We're usually working off a whole lot less. Like, my cat told me it in the middle of the night or something, but it's, we still run with it. But it was crazy. To me, that was the thing that took me back. Like, I knew the two guys were friends and they're involved with the Green Wall, and then these other people, and they're all saying the same thing, and they're putting this narrative. Then all of a sudden you see bots pushing these same narratives that are getting like, this is, and you had a good 48-hour period there where you were just, it was bizarre, man.
Yeah,
that was bizarre.
I just hunkered down the hatches. I just realized, you know what? I think the best approach here is to just be quiet about it. Because it just, you can tell it's not organic from the outside perspective, right? Yeah. And the fact that everybody's aligning themselves, and that's where I just kind of posted my kind of a little coy post about, just watch and see who wants to lie. Let's see who wants to reveal themselves. Because like you just said, and I've said this from the beginning, is we know there's a disinformation campaign to hide this stuff if it's real. So if the videos are real, we don't have to do anything. We just have to watch and wait and see who wants to lie about them, and they will reveal themselves. And boy, did they, man, they revealed themselves. They revealed their connections, like you just mentioned. And I think that a lot of those people, they're now, if they didn't have skin in the game before, now they definitely do. Because now if the videos get proven to be real, those people's credibility is shot for the rest of their lives. No one will ever listen to what John Greenwald ever says ever again. And, I already didn't trust him because I don't trust anybody whose their whole job is writing Freedom of Information Act requests that come from the government, where every single Freedom of Information Act request I've put in has basically been blackballed and like denied and rejected. But all of a sudden he like gets select information handed to them. He's got relationships with those Freedom of Information Act request officers. They're only giving him the stuff that they want him to reveal, right? Let's just be honest about it.
Or maybe they're giving him the stuff that needs to be out.
Either way you look at it, right? Either it's intentional or he's being used one way or another, right? But when he starts attacking me, then he reveals himself and reveals his true nature, right? Because again, if you're somebody who's seeking disclosure, I'm not hurting anyone's disclosure efforts. If anything, I'm just helping them inadvertently. So yeah.
The thing, like, I like Alien Scientist, and that when you guys were doing that, like, I figured that would be the one that was probably going to be the roughest. And I was like, man, it's going to be good. And that's just his nature. He's a very, he's thorough. He's fact-based. We need more of that kind of in this community. I said community. I feel dirty. I shouldn't have said that. I despise that. I apologize to everybody listening. Your ear holes were defiled by me.
Next, you're going to be telling us how long you've been in the field for.
Never. Never. I've been in a field a couple times when I was younger. I woke up in a field once. Wasn't abducted. Pretty sure I know how I got there.
But your ass was bleeding.
It definitely. Yeah, I mean, it needed sutures. That was some heavy petting. But I forgot where I was going when he distracted me with the bleeding asshole thing. I mean, that's an easy thing to get distracted by. No, like, so the other ones, right? You got these other podcasts, which, whatever. They were vicious and personal, and they cultivated a personal attack, genuinely a personal attack, before one of them even aired.
Yeah. It
was bizarre. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, what's going on? And we'd all, of course, talked about it. And I was like, listen, I'm going to send Ashton a message. This shit's nuts. I don't know what's going on. I think you guys should do the same. And I'm glad we had you on now. But especially right after that, I thought it was,
Yeah, I think it gives me more credibility, though, right? Like, same reason why when my Reddit subreddit got banned the same day I revealed my full name. Like, the more attacks like that, the more credibility. Because I think if I'm on their side, the best way to discredit me would be to try to claim that I'm like part of a psyop or something like that. But it's hard to do that if I'm literally being attacked 24/7 by the machine, by a coordinated group, right? The only coordinated group would be they're the ones who are part of the government, right? And they're linked to the government. It's not going to be reversed like that. So to me, it's like, if anyone did have any doubts about it, it's like, well, there you go. Even some people were trying to start up like the Russian disinformation angle. Like, dude, I'm a U.S. citizen with a U.S. Like background check and security clearance. Like, what? I'm Russian disinformation now?
Yeah,
like,
that sounds like something a communist would say.
The thing is exactly what they would expect you to say.
It's so funny though. So yeah, I think that. Go ahead, jump on in, Ollie.
I was going to say every channel that's had you on, we all have something in common now. We all have that little Wikipedia link right underneath this video right now. That will give you factual information about MH370. Just like you get the same Wikipedia link when you talk about COVID. Yeah. Just like you get the same Wikipedia link if you talk about anything that they don't want you to talk about.
Yep. Yeah, that's like the Sonia Poutin when I was on her show, the UK show, and she was great. I hope I get to go back on there and talk to them again because they were just super nice people. And she's like, we Googled you ahead of time. We got the results were changing quickly. I'm like, oh, badge of honor, results changing quickly on Google. That's, that tells you they're trying to hide something there. So, yeah.
There's truth in that. Yeah, man, it was bizarre. It really was. It was. Another thing is like, if this was a marketing ploy, I could see them as guys getting, hey, we can capitalize on this. It's moving forward. Maybe we need a little more zest to our podcast. This is the angle we're going to take. Let's work it out. I feel like after watching their podcast, I don't know any of them personally. I feel like I'm giving them a shitload more credit than they deserve. Because I've seen other ones that they've done, and I'm like,
I think if you wanted numbers, you would go with it. It's much more fun because nobody wants to be told Father Christmas isn't real.
Nobody likes that guy.
If you were gonna put a campaign together with your friend's podcast, you go, right, we are going in on this.
It's what we would do, but think about it. How many people have whispered in our ears to go in that same direction? Into the negative direction. And so I think it would be easy for them. But so like devil's advocate, they're playing it together to try and work this thing up. If you go by the comments that they have had and the tweets, they should have known just by X, this is a bad damn idea. This is not playing the way we think it's going to play. And it kind of made me wonder if that's why the one podcast waited so long to release it when they'd had it. Because he even was like, maybe I'll just hold it back for third person embarrassment.
You told me.
And I was like, what?
Yeah. I was talking to him the whole time. It was like, and that's why I couldn't know I couldn't tell if I could trust him or not. Because he's like, oh, maybe I should play this up a little bit. And he posts that message, and I'm like, I kept telling him, like, don't do this. Like, do you not read like the first podcaster's comments where they were just ripping him to shreds for being dishonest? So, like, do you really want to go down that same road? Like, I mean, it's up to you. It's your podcast, right?
If you're gonna do it, own it. Yeah.
You know, I think they got more, if you give it a more neutral stance, like the topic's already controversial enough. You don't need to drum up any more marketing for it. It was my view. And he called me this morning, you know, Danny did. And this is why I think he's a good guy, you know, but again, it's hard for me to trust people, especially when after they call me up and say, hey, I was thinking to go with like Ashton exposed, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, you're really going to go with the exposed angle again here, man? Like I was there in the podcast. I didn't get exposed at any point in this thing. And I tell him, like, people only read the headlines. It feels very dishonest if you're going to do that, right? And he's like, okay, well, we won't go with that. Let's go with, like, revealed or whatever. And I tell him just make it, like, MH370 conspiracy, like, classified technology and whatever. And he's like, no, I want to go with the, like, corridor crew versus Ashton angle.
He wants a gotcha. He's like, oh, it needs to get more clicks or whatever. And I'm like, dude, I'm like, look, man, it's your thing, but whatever. And I thought we had an agreement that he was going to go with, like, revealed or whatever. First thing I see on the title is, like, MH370 videos exposed, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, dude, okay, that's where it stops becoming a marketing angle and more like it's dishonest intent, right? It's planned with his best friend, right? Then they're either being used by the government or whatever. And the real thing that reveals it is not a marketing thing, is they didn't act like this to any other guest in their history. And people pointed this out. They have some people on there they do softball interviews with. They have people that even the people they challenge, they've never come to this level of trying to discredit the person before. And that's what I think really takes away.
Used by the government. Sorry, Lee, go on.
I was just going to say, we brought up on I think it was, would have been last Sunday, guys? It would have been last Sunday after Record being on. And we would talk about this. We would talk about the concrete guy. And I went through like the last few podcasts he'd done.
I like concrete as well.
Yeah, but it was all like underwater civilization Atlantis found and this, that. It was like if he would have just been a load of sort of like autobiographical type podcasts with various people, you know, like a Joe Rogan type thing, I get it. But all of the other podcasts he's done with conspiracy stuff as well. So it wasn't like he's like not used to having like weird things on his show. The other thing that really caught me off was because I'd never heard of the Dorian guy before this. I still find it really confusing how somebody can have 500,000 YouTube subscribers. And up until the day of like the shitstorm happened, he had 1,000 followers on Twitter. Yeah, I don't understand that. Like, I really don't understand how that's even possible. And maybe he just doesn't tweet. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's something really simple. But I mean, how can somebody with 500,000 YouTube subs have less followers on Twitter than me? That makes absolutely no sense.
Not just that, like I looked at his videos afterwards. And so when I was in the interview, I started having big questions about what was going on based on how he was trying to treat me, how he was being super disrespectful. So I started looking up at YouTube and I realized that like all the recent videos, nothing had over 100,000 views. Most of them were like 20 to 40,000. This is somebody with 500,000 subscribers, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, so, did you get, what's your deal? You get deboosted? And he claimed he got deboosted from talking about Israel, Palestine or something like that. But just very little of it was adding up to me. I mean, he told me personally that he was struggling monetarily. I won't go into more details from the YouTube channel side of it. But yeah, very little of it kind of adds up. And yeah, again, I'm not big on conspiracy side of it, but it just doesn't really add up. The numbers don't add up to me. Like I've got 50,000 followers on Twitter now. And I've already got like over 8,000 subscribers on my YouTube, which is only 2 weeks old, 3 weeks old or something like that. And you would think that they would go hand in hand with one another, right? Like one's going to lead the other. Yeah. So it is pretty odd for sure.
Yeah. What was it like after the show?
Yeah, that had to be fun.
Yeah, I mean, so after the show, I was still super nice to him, right? Then? But like, I could tell he was being kind of weird in general. Like, he was somebody that, it's like if you're saying goodbye to somebody you don't really care about that much, right? It's not like we're like hugging it out or anything. Or like, hey, great job, bro. I was like, oh yeah, I think that went well. He's like, yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, It's like, okay, my buddy's gonna give you a ride back. It's not like we didn't sit around chat, shoot the breeze. He's like, okay, get Ashton out of here and take him to the shittiest hotel in all of New Jersey, right? And I get to this hotel, it's like the shittiest place I've ever seen in my life. And now I'm like sitting there going, oh, okay, I was set up. Like this was, this was a hit piece that they were coming at me. And I already was thinking about the stuff ahead of time. So my wheels are churning, right? And I check in and I realize he hasn't paid for the hotel either. And I'm like, okay, wow. And people wonder, why would not hit him up? Well, geez, if you have that kind of interaction with somebody, the last thing I want to do is talk to him, right? I just want to get out of there. And it's not about the money for me either. It's just about showing what his intent was, which is pretty clear. And so, yeah, and the thing is his producer was super nice. His producer that he was with, this guy, Alessi, I think that, he wants to be a podcaster. I think he can be a podcaster. We talked about what his niche might be. We were talking about football, all kinds of stuff like that.
He was like the Rogan Jamie guy, wasn't he?
He was the one on the side or whatever. But yeah, so
he had a few good comments as well. It was like, seems like an intelligent kid.
Yeah, I think he's intelligent. But yeah, they're younger too. At least I'm a little bit older now. It's kind of weird to say that I'm starting to get older, but
you're probably a little bit older just after the last week.
There's a couple gray hairs in here somewhere for sure. I hope I don't go full John Oliver and get fully gray by the end of this. That would be pretty telling. But yeah, I mean, he was kind of fine after, but I started realizing something wasn't right. And so I texted him like maybe the next day or something and said, hey, man, I'm like going to have to come out make some pretty harsh statements against some of the factual inaccuracies, specifically the stuff about the witnesses that he was trying to claim. Like, it was so weird the way he was like trying to claim that like Mike McKay couldn't see the plane and like the weird stuff about KT seeing inside the cockpit. I'm like, she didn't say that she's like seeing people in the cockpit. She just said she can see the cockpit, which really should not be a controversial statement. Like when you see a plane that's flying low, you can see the cockpit, like you can see the glass or whatever. So when he started digging into that, I realized there's not something right. And then when he I don't know if he ended up showing it because I didn't even watch his podcast, honestly, but other than like a couple clips when I realized it was completely edited, like in not like chronologically, he did this thing about Florence Echangi where he's like Googling her for like 20 minutes to try to claim that she saw that her like view is that the plane was shot down. And I had already spoken to her personally. And the funny part is I thought that was her claim. And so I talked to her personally and she corrects the record for me and tells me, no, like the media has, distorted my views. I just, essentially tried to figure out like what are all the options that could have happened. Right. But that's not necessarily her direct claim. And I try to tell him this and he just like goes off the deep end about Googling for like 20 minutes, finding Wikipedia article. And I'm like, find a quote, right? Don't find like what the media is editorializing, find an exact quote. And I try to explain this to him, and he's like, well, I found 3 articles here that claim that she says that the plane shot down, so that's what we're going with. That's the truth, right? And that's when I realized, like, okay, this guy's...
the headlines are always the truth. Everybody
knows got Redditor syndrome, right? Like, whatever's the headline is what must be the truth. But I think the real thing that shook me the wrong way on that one was when he says, I'm going to go against what I always do and give you unsolicited advice. Just any news, any podcasters out there, never usher those words to your guest. Never say that you're going to give them unsolicited advice. That is the most egotistical thing that you could humanly do. And really, it just comes off as dishonest. There's no reason to do that. The only reason why you would do that is because you have an emotional bias that you can't get past. I've never thought to give them. So at the end of the interview, he was arguing with his producer. The producer guy says, you know, you should put your stuff on Rumble. I'm never going to put my stuff on Rumble. I'm no. Like, and they're just arguing while I'm packing my stuff up or whatever.
Put your stuff on Rumble.
He should put his stuff on Rumble.
Yeah. And he's like,
And
no,
our Rumble link is below.
Yeah, for everyone watching, our Rumble link is there as well as our Rockfin.
The reason though is that he cares so much about what people think of him, right? That's what he tells me is that, well, I all the people that are Rumble are, you know, I don't want to be like labeled like that or whatever. For being on Rumble, right? Like it's just for putting your stuff on Rumble. And so that's how I knew too when the first podcast dropped that it was just going to be a disaster for him because, you know, I look and I was checking out some of the comments and I could see him replying to comments like 2 a.m. on some of these people are just ripping him to shreds. And I'm like, dude, I bet this is just getting to him so hard because he cares so much what people think of him. And that's probably the reason, in my opinion, why he put out that statement is that he just had a total meltdown from the comments in the first part. Did not think it was going to go that way. I'm sure he thought it was going to go completely differently. But again, this is just, it should be a lesson for people, is especially younger podcasters. People don't want to see you ripping down your guests. They don't want to see, they can see through the dishonesty really easily. Right. And when you do that, it just looks really bad. So, you know, that's not what I do with my guests. Like I'm trying to have people on that I'm going to enjoy their content, that I'm going to learn something, you know? So I don't know. That's just my view.
Yeah. The little video he put out, talking about how he defends and goes for everyone and he disagrees with the comments on that. All right.
Yeah.
It didn't make him look great.
No.
You know, it did not. I tell you what, though, of this last one, the one that just aired today, I loved your butthole comment.
Yeah.
The
butthole comment. Yeah.
Absolutely.
My butthole looks like your butthole. That doesn't mean my butthole is your butthole. Like that's kind of the argument for when two things look similar. And I think you see that a lot from debunkers, a prosaic explanation. Like when it comes to UFOs, everything's a balloon, right? It's a balloon or it's there's like 3 things. Chinese lantern, which I've never seen a freaking Chinese lantern in my life. I don't know. These Chinese lanterns apparently are everywhere out there. And then it's either that or it's Starlink satellites. It's like, these are the 3 things that everything's either a balloon, a Chinese lantern, or a Starlink satellite. And it's like, okay, I get it. Things look the same or similar, but like maybe we should investigate them just a little bit deeper than like, oh, that looks like a balloon. Like, do people even realize that balloons don't go up to like 35,000 feet unless it's like a weather balloon? Like, I don't think people realize balloons pop, and that's what I have an issue with. All these people like, oh, I'm seeing a Batman balloon at 35,000 feet. It's like, you think there's a commercial Batman balloon, like just one that you buy at the corner store that's up at 35,000 feet? Like,
that was amazing. That the idea that a fighter pilot took a picture of a helium balloon as he was flying past it. Yeah.
The trained observer. The trained observer didn't know what he was looking at.
Yeah.
I'm just confused that no one's realized that like Chinese lanterns were just put up there to confuse people and to, you know, guys, we need to get something up there to cover up these UFOs.
The Chinese lantern
can do it. Let's get it up. Let's get it up there.
Swamp gas isn't cutting it anymore, guys. Come on.
Chinese lantern.
Elon, you're doing something up there. Can you just release something in the atmosphere to cover up that big fucking giant alien spaceship?
Yeah, it's too funny. And I like that. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just they come up with these very cheap debunks and what have you. So that's why I think it's funny. The way you break that stuff down is through humor, right? So that's why I like the my butthole, although it's a little bit crude. The my butthole is your butthole is like kind of example, but it kind of breaks down those prosaic debunks. The one I like the most is the donut, is when I just compare to have the VFX turn into the donut and it's like a perfect overlay. That's why I say, sorry guys, it's too close. It has to be it, you know? I even did one early on. We were looking it up yesterday on my stream. I think it was back in end of September, where somebody from Reddit had overlaid the VFX debunk or the VFX effect over the Nazca mummy head. And it's like a perfect alignment with their, like the head of the mummy. I said, sorry guys, the Nazca mummies have been debunked. It turns out it was a 90s video game effect. It's too close to not be the same. And, you know, because they argue that, oh, this line is in the same location. It's like, they don't realize how easy it is to just resize something and have a circle match up over another circle.
The Mexican mummy things or the Peruvian mummy things that are now held by Mexico is interesting, especially when, like, and we'd done a podcast on it and I reserve that, I don't know what it is. It needs to be done. Like, you need it to CT scan. It needs an X-ray. You need medical professionals to look at it. What I loved is when the Mexican medical professionals and instructors at the medical school, the teachers, the professors from their medical school who are doctors, were like, "Oh no, that's real tissue." People are like, "Oh, they don't know what they're talking about. They're Mexican."
Whoa, the racism comes out, right?
Whoa, that guy teaches at Johns Hopkins.
That's when like people reveal themselves. The other part too is like I like when I will like debunk the suicide myth, and people are like, "Oh, he's a Muslim terrorist." Like I'm like, Jesus, man, like whoa, dial it back. Like just because someone's a certain religion doesn't mean that they're automatically a suicide bomber. Like, come on now, like oh my goodness. Or the people that'll say like, and I'm not going to read the message, but I got like one of the most unhinged messages from that podcaster after I politely asked him to take down that video that he posted, which I think if he had taken it down, it would look better for him.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't, he sent me his message.
He
and
doubled
one
down.
thing I hear a lot is that this fake compassion angle is the worst angle. Like you're hurting the families of the victims by digging into this case. The families got no answers. They were forced into cheap ass settlements because they weren't even allow it to be tried in the United States where they got millions. You know how much these families got total? Like 75, 80 grand each. And this is after 10 years. Most of them lost their income earners and their families. They got like nothing. If these were tried in the United States, they're getting millions.
Whatever.
They're like, oh, you're hurting the families.
Whatever
happened
happened
to
to
that
that judge?
9/11 stuff. It's exactly the same sort of response you get. It's always that won't somebody think of the children line.
Yeah, won't they think of the children? And these are from people that probably have never cared about anybody but themselves in their whole lives, right? Like, when was the last time they've ever helped another human being? And they want to have this fake compassion. Like, if you're out there and you're one of the debunkers or the haters, never go with the fake compassion line. It is so transparent. and especially because constantly I'm talking about trying to do this for the families, do this for the pilot that was vilified, because that's really what it's ultimately about. So I'm trying to say that like you're hurting the families is just absolutely absurd.
Yeah, it is interesting when people start making those base appeals because people are like, "Oh, well, you have to." No. You're trying to take this and back me into an emotional argument or emotional place that I won't retaliate from or argue with you because you're trying to take some perceived false high ground when the reality is all those people were screwed and shorted. And what happened to the federal judge who was making those calls? What happened to her?
Promotion to Supreme Court justice.
Oh, that's right. I'm sure those weren't related.
What a shock. That's the part where I'm sitting here and I'm trying to avoid falling into the conspiracy rabbit hole, like desperately trying to avoid falling into it.
You should come in. The water's fine.
I start reading about the settlements and I'm just like, wait, who's the federal judge who ruled against it being tried in the United States? Ketanji Brown Jackson, 2 years before she gets a promotion to Supreme Court justice. I'm like, okay, guys. Boy, I don't want to dig down into this, but it's spooking me a little bit, especially because we're looking at 2 U.S. asset videos filming the plane disappearing out of space-time, which that immediately is going to pull it back to the U.S. jurisdiction. Just right there, that's enough evidence. I don't even think you have to prove the videos to be real for that to come back in the U.S. jurisdiction. Like at that point now, they've got to desperately prove the videos aren't real. So, I mean, it's wild, man.
Well, it's also Lockheed Martin monitoring all skies over every country in the world simultaneously. Yeah. Oh, by the way, we're listening to everything in the water. What the hell are we doing, guys?
Yeah,
I get like as an American, I'm proud of being American. I love being an American. Geography is destiny.
Yeah,
I was blessed. But it's sometimes late at night, I think to myself, "Are we the baddies?"
Yeah, no, especially recently, I've been thinking it too.
Are we the empire?
Are we the baddies is really what it comes down to. I'm just like, because I was thinking before this stuff ever come out that like we might not be the superpower in the world anymore, right? And we might not be the bullies that everybody is made out to be. And then I see this come out, I'm like, oh no, we're the bullies. We're the bullies. We are the ones that we've got all the secret tech that we're holding back. We're not letting. I mean, there's poor people and homeless people everywhere that we could end. Like, homelessness probably tomorrow if we cared enough to get this technology out. But nope. No, we're going to keep it because we want to enrich some elite people. We're going to let all these wars happen, these proxy wars that we're involved in that could be over in a day. Just let them keep going and people killing themselves. Like, okay, we're not as good as I thought we were. Yeah.
No, what we do is we get rid of anywhere that provides public mental health care, and then we isolate everyone, make them take away looking at other humans' faces, which we know is psychologically needed, corner them, fill them with fear porn, and then expect them to just be okay.
And control social media and the message, right? And
everything that has been proven. The
Mm-hmm.
social media control is proven. This is the thing that people like.
100%.
I'm obviously a conspiracy theorist, right? Like 100%. The reality is I liked being a conspiracy theorist more 10, 15 years ago when people just thought I was nuts. And now you start seeing things and like, oh, damn. Yeah, this was a lot more fun than when we were just joking around.
It's getting dark now. It's just not fun anymore.
Dark.
It's just dark.
And like, I know a bunch of the conspiracies and how they end, man. Everybody's butthole should be tightening up. It doesn't
give
look
me back.
Good.
Give me back 2015 when it was just listening to people with flat Earth theories on podcasts.
Oh, those are the good days right there. Those were the good days.
Like now it's just there's so much this social war and culture war that's happening, and it's like so toxic. But I think that a lot of people don't want to think that they're the ones being radicalized, right? And I see this on Reddit as well, where every time now I see like a mass shooting, I just go, what was a Reddit handle? Like, show me which subreddits they were on the most, because I think that a lot of that is coming. I truly believe that Reddit is the biggest source of disinformation and radicalization on the planet right now, whereas maybe like 10, 20 years ago, people would argue it was like 4chan or something like that, where now it's moved from the fringe to the mainstream. And because they've banned so many people that have wrong think about every topic there is, they create this echo chamber of people. And then what happens is, I think you can even argue it to a very lesser extent. You see it on my more recent podcast that we were just talking about, where people think that their views are the majority and they become indignant when they hear somebody who says something that's contradictory to what they strongly believe to be true. And this is what I tell people a lot, is that I find that the people that get the most angry are ones that get told something that is true that goes against their previously deep held beliefs, right? What they were sure must be true, right? Somebody tells me something that I disagree with, that I think is silly. I just don't care. I just laugh it off. I never get angry about it, right? But you see these people get angry about it. You see them get emotionally invested in it. How could you not believe this, right? Like, okay, well, I'm just following the facts, right? I think the real question is, why are you believing it? Go ahead.
This is the problem with algorithms, isn't it? And it's good because I think you're right about Reddit. I think the next place this will come from is TikTok now, because if you watch like the
100%.
live TikToks and just skip through them, and you've got these little bunches of people that are just trapped in their own little world that keep getting fed back into that because it keeps engagement going and keeps people's eyes on screen. It's so dangerous. It's so dangerous for somebody not so much check you on your bullshit, but just be more open to what other people are saying all the time. You might think it's fucking nonsense, but you've got to hear it.
No, I agree. The TikTok thing too is like, I was all for banning TikTok just because I'm against social media in general, because it just always gets abused, right? And it can be abused by China, US, doesn't matter. They're just going to abuse it. Like, I saw what they did to Reddit from its early days to what the bastardization of it is right now, where, it used to be a thing where you could go learn about the news a day or two in advance. And now it's the opposite, where they're trying to tell you what to think and what the news should be, And I'll throw Elon Musk some support here right now as well, because he has made sure that we don't get banned. But, all the articles against Elon Musk on Twitter are so inorganic. Like, on Reddit, you would go there and you think he's the worst person in the world. You think Twitter is the worst thing in the world. All my family members thought Twitter was going to go bankrupt like a year ago, months after he bought it. They were sure the place was going to go bankrupt, whatever. And that's all intentional. Is like, because the government lost some control over that platform, like, they're pushing these fake stories out there, like all these lawsuits against them too. Whatever happened with all those lawsuits that supposedly were going to bankrupt him, right? All of a sudden, you never hear about the result. You just hear about like, hey, this negative aspect of it. Even on the conspiracy subreddit, the number one fake comment you'll see is, Elon is not your friend, because it appeals to people that are conspiratorial in nature, right? Oh, Elon's not my friend. I mean, he probably isn't, but he certainly hasn't got me banned from the platform, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Question.
People just quickly. People don't have to be. They don't have to be a knight in shining armor to just be your best option.
Exactly. You got it. Exactly. Like, I don't have to agree with Neuralink or whatever other stuff he's doing or anything else he's doing, right? In fact, I was never even a supporter of Elon Musk before all this stuff. But the part that weirds me out is how everyone on Reddit loved him, and then they were able to flip it just like that. They're able to go, okay, pull out the bullshit argument or pull the news articles, right? And they're just inundate you with them. And they can do this to anyone.
It's the same as the green lobby. You know, it's 10 years ago, they would have bathed in Elon Musk's piss. You know, when he was bringing like the solar city idea, the solar roof tiles and stuff like that. They loved the guy. Now he's a Nazi.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you think he knows about this tech?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think he's got the Starlink contracts, right? So I'm surprised he hasn't commented. The part where I would have thought he would have weighed in was after we had like the biggest space on Twitter with Kim.com. We had over 3,000 concurrent listeners. We had Greg Gutfield was sitting in my space. We had Scott Adams, who made Dilbert in our space. Greg Gutfield, people don't know, is like the #1 Fox News personality on the whole network. We had Jacob Chansley, the shaman from the J6, speak up on UFOlogy. This is the part where I was like, okay, Elon's got to show up here, right? You met him in real life.
Oh, yeah.
I consider him a supporter now. But so we had like, it was the biggest space on Twitter. It had to be, I think. I can't imagine how 3,000 concurrent people, there was anything bigger happening at the time. So he's definitely got to be aware of the situation at this point. And he's probably in a situation where he has DoD contracts because of their Starlink agreements. And I think that everybody who has DoD contracts, probably they're being told they can't talk about this, right? Like, and he might even know the implications of it. If he knows the implications of the technology, this is why I have the poll up there right now, which is like, would you still want this disclosed? I think that the military industrial complex has said that, this is too risky. This is national defense. That the reason why this is being held back. And anybody that goes out against it, they're risking all their contracts. They're risking their connections. I think this can explain why the UFOologists, these big ones, like the Jeremy Corbells, even the Ross Coleharts, why all these people aren't speaking up on it. Either they have connections they don't want to lose, or they're directly connected to the government and they're told not to, look in a situation. In fact, Ross Colehardt made one of the most ironic comments I had ever seen, talking about how mainstream media won't look into a particular UFO case or whatever like that. And I just reply, I'm like, yeah, this is kind of the same way how you won't look into the MH370 case, like, because claiming that they're controlled or whatever. I'm like, isn't this the same as your situation? Like, yeah.
Yeah, I think on the Musk thing, you can't fight battles on all fronts. And there's there was an interesting thing when he was on the last interview on Joe Rogan, and he brought up all the stuff about George Soros and the stuff that he funds and things. And Joe Rogan turned around to him and said, well, surely someone would pump the brakes on this. And he replied, said, yeah, that's what I'm doing now. So you just think, well, if you go and if that's what you're doing, and now he's taking media matters to court, he's probably got a lot on his plate.
100%. And you have to realize, if you have that big of a following too, your actions have to be so measured. Like, if he were to even like comment on one of my posts, or even retweet, like, all of a sudden you're putting such a huge light on this situation. I would probably double or triple my followers just from something like some minor thing like that, right? And so he has to probably be very careful about what he posts on, because you see his stuff, like anytime he posts on anyone else's thing, it's like thousands of likes, retweets, et cetera, immediately. But that's part of the reason why too, I'm not, this thing's getting bigger and bigger, right? This whole case is getting bigger and bigger. I'm increasing the production value. I just bought this nice new camera here that we've got. And I want to thank the people. Some people have been donating. I didn't know how super emojis worked on YouTube. We had some big donations from some people as well that I haven't asked anybody for anything, but they just feel compelled to help out the case. And so I'm going to use that money to increase our production value, which help increase our reach, help make sure that the evidence gets to a wider audience, to the point where it's just so awkward that people are ignoring it, that, everyone's always asking them. And we've already kind of reached that inflection point. You can tell where like the Mick Wests have come back into the world, right? Where they were trying to ignore it desperately, but they're getting spammed with like dozens and dozens of messages about it. Please, Daddy West, please debunk this for us, please. Right. And like, okay, I've got it. It's getting too awkward to ignore anymore. Right. And I think that's what happened with like right before that first podcast a couple of weeks ago, or last week or whatever, is that we really started to hit that inflection point where it's getting so awkward, especially for these UFOologists, where I just imagine how many times they're being asked about it. You know, I was watching, someone sent me a link to the Y-Files. We're doing one of their streams, and I don't know if it's AJ's wife, but they get a donation and say, you know, what's your comment on the MH370? And they said that, you know, they're looking into doing a podcast about it and they're digging into it. But just imagine how many like behind closed doors messages they're getting if they're getting like donation requests to ask like about the case. You know,
it's funny. Go ahead.
I was just going to say when you've looked into this, you've always like kind of wondered what happened to it, where it went, what did it just get zapped and that was it? Did it go somewhere? We've got the families saying that the phones were ringing for days. And I'm going to ask a question now, and Lee and Dave are probably going to message me in a minute, just saying stop.
We do that, by the way. We genuinely
they do that. Have you ever considered that they shrunk it?
That's a good point. You know, not really. I don't know that that's the kind
I
of
say that because I look at sometimes movies and people say movies are real, and you're like Ant-Man, and I did do a little bit of like Googling.
But Ollie does think Honey, I Shrunk the Kids is a documentary.
Yeah, you gotta understand, Ollie's our sweet boy. Okay? He's our sweet
apparently
boy.
There is like some woo science there that it could possibly be a thing to shrink something. So
yeah,
they wouldn't be able to find it if they shrunk it, you know.
I think you're right and you're wrong, and the part that I think you're right about is that they can reduce the mass of the object, but the way it seems to work is that it's not going to actually shrink it, more so like put it in a field that allows it to, if you want to think of it as like a fourth dimension, but essentially break away from space-time itself. And I've learned more and more about this in the last few weeks, even probably since the last time we talked. And I'm excited to learn more about it from Dave Rossi on Sunday on my Hard Truths #3, little plug right there. He's somebody that's been actually doing the experiment. So I went from Salvatore Pais with the patents to Bob Grenier, who he expanded on a lot of what you just asked, Ollie, about it. Theoretically, it could be annihilation. I'm pulling annihilation back into the fold. Theoretically, the problem is there has to be a byproduct somewhere. And he argues, well, it would just go through like a wormhole and show up in like the center of the earth or something like that. The byproduct of it getting annihilated, which to me is it's just not. I need more hard evidence. Like I want to see a byproduct happen like right there, right in front of me whenever they annihilate the plane. I want to see it get turned into gold or whatever they're going to do. Right. So I still believe it's more of like a teleportation, but it's not really teleportation. Like it's more of, you're able to enclose the plane, cause it to change its function. It's really like cheating in a video game, honestly, which now it's gone to like that. What that people are telling me is the waves can cohere. So if you were to think of like waves crashing, if you were to synchronize them up so they're like directly over top of each other, that's how it's kind of been explained to me from a matter perspective, from a macroscopic perspective. And then once you can do that, it's almost the equivalent of magic, which goes back to the whole point about the simulation, which is this shouldn't be possible.
Shouldn't be possible.
But it is, apparently. And if you can do that, though, here's a cool part. The last thing I'll say is that if you can turn this to a wave function to have its mass get fundamentally reduced by breaking it away from space-time, turns out you don't need a lot of energy to move it. Once the mass becomes zero, now you can just push it with just a light push. We'll move it around. So that was the part that was kind of amazing, where it's like, oh, okay, so it might take a lot of energy to cause this to happen. But once you have it undergo this phase conjugation, now you can just push it anywhere you want, slide it anywhere around, and it'll instantly show up somewhere else. Hey, thanks to the donos for the Alien Addict crew here.
Yeah, man, he's been on it. I don't know how to say that name. I'm not even going to try. I went to public school.
We appreciate everybody.
Yeah, we really do.
Especially those likes. Hit them likes.
So yeah, I've been trying to understand more of the science part, because I think that's the part I'm the weakest on when it's the case. You know, I think I can explain all the rest of everything. It makes a lot of logical sense. It's when you get to that science part where it's like, you know, you can woo the people. And it's funny because even when I was on that one podcaster's thing, they didn't give me any pushback on any of the science stuff, which is because it was clearly like way over their head.
They ignored all of that, and they're focusing on extraneous detail.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing when you were an alien scientist show, like he knew the science behind it. Like,
and that's why, go ahead, keep on.
No, go on.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's why it probably turned him a little bit too, because he realized like this isn't something I can just poke holes in easily, right? Like he's talking to people that are telling him to phrase it in the right way, where it's not as easy to be able to discredit, right? If I sit there and start talking about portals and portaling to the other dimensions and stuff like that, like he might be able to crack holes in it. But you start talking about macroscopic phase conjugation and matter cohering into a matter wave and all these other terms that are like explain what's happening. That's the part where like, okay, wait, this guy maybe does know what he's talking about from the scientific perspective. But again, this is just for me to get tutored.
That's the thing there with Jeremy, is that people that will not know this, that have seen you on Jeremy's show, he has pulled Bob Lazar to pieces. He doesn't believe it. I mean, I love the Bob Lazar thing. We all do here. But Jeremy is he started with Bob Lazar, and he has gone well against that. I'll be honest with you. I did think when I was watching Jeremy's show, at some point he was going to start trying to pick you apart, and I think he prodded a little bit, but he got intrigued like so much with the science behind it that he stopped and he listened and he was intrigued with it. Like,
yeah, and I was skeptical of him too, but I think he's defended me after the fact, again, from people who've attacked me. He's defended my reputation. I've chatted with him in DMs. I plan on potentially having him on my own show. And I think that, because it's even hard for me to trust people, right? But I think his reaction and the way he went about it makes him credible in my mind from that perspective. And even the Bob Lazar thing, like I thought for sure there must be some element 115 out there. But from what I've learned from science now, we don't need any of that to make any of this stuff happen, which has been kind of amazing to me. So I don't know what to think of Bob Lazar. I think he seems like an honest guy, but he also is somebody that had compartmentalized access to information, right? So maybe he's being fed some disinformation intentionally so that if he did come out, he wouldn't be credible, right? And then he wouldn't be able to know all the truth. So I'm not sure what to think about that, or really anyone. I've kind of had to second guess everything I've known about UFOlogy in the last 5 years and everything else, honestly, about the whole reality.
It's funny, earlier you mentioned the Y-Files. I actually sent these guys a clip. He did a really good job. He was talking about, I forget the episode. I think it's like 115. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe it's 113. And he was talking about
crop circles, Dave.
Crop circles.
That was one of my favorite ones I've ever watched with him.
Yeah. So the end of that, he talks about Operation Mockingbird, Operation Blackbird. Those are real things. The CIA does put people in media organizations. At least, back in the day, it was estimated there was something 10%. And now with podcasting and alternative media, who knows how many they back? I mean, the reality is our budget for the Department of Defense, which also feeds all these intelligence agencies, they're missing half of assets. It was the last thing that everyone just kind of swept under $4 trillion, and we're missing $2 trillion worth. So who knows where it all is or what's going on? But it is something I always take into consideration, that these people at certain levels question everything and trust no one. I trust these guys kind of. I don't think they trust me, and they shouldn't. But
you didn't kill us when we came to meet you, and I wasn't sure that was how that was going to go down.
Yeah, well, I have a ritual I like to follow, and I want my friends to feel very comfortable right till the end.
That's a big donation.
Yeah. Whoa! Holy cow!
Thank you very much.
That is
what is he saying? Because I can't follow this.
That is
it's a big donation.
I got you. It says
read this in English for me.
Yeah. Hey, panel, swords, alien, invader, spaceship, dino, cloud, spaceship. Looks like they're abducting. Is Diego Garcia the same base that alien scientist and dark journalist claim is real? For the fucking sake, spookiest shoot.
I don't
understand it, but I like it.
Yeah.
You know what? I'm intrigued.
Yeah,
yes.
People keep telling me the dark journalist. I think he's been pinged probably the most out of anybody on my content. So I don't know exactly who dark journalist is, but surely would like to talk to them. Diego Garcia, I think, is definitely a base people should be, if you're into the conspiracy side, probably should be looking at that base. I'd say forget about Area 51. Look at Diego Garcia. Figure out everything you want about that, but be careful.
Yeah, Doc
you know,
Journalist's got.
don't say it 3 times in a row.
I think his stuff's on Twitter. He's an English guy, isn't he?
Oh, is he?
I'm
Dr.
gonna
Journalist?
look him
Yeah, I
up
think
now.
so. Yeah. I've watched some of his stuff. I'm sure he's got a Rumble show.
That's cool. Yeah.
I figure if they have any tech, it is at one of the U.S. government labs.
Yeah.
U.S. sponsored, secured by third party. Again, it's third party security. We have military grade equipment and authorization to shoot on site. You know,
Even
they
better,
have
though,
miles
just
of
put your base in
nuclear.
an ocean, you know, in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, there's true, but getting it there, getting it back,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's the problem. Yeah, who knows, man? Who knows?
One other thing I wanted to touch on was I have not yet been approached by the government. I probably wouldn't be able to say if I had, but I'm going to go ahead and claim right now as a statement of fact that I have not been yet approached by the government. I've been waiting so that I could get you guys involved. You know, I want to, you know, let my people, you know, turn you guys into some spooks, you know, and then I can feed you guys information that you can tell the people, but still hasn't happened.
I'll even just make coffee for them. I'm not picky about my job.
That's because you've never seen feds order coffee. You best rethink that. There's easier things to do.
Yeah, and if they're out there listening, you know, I'd much rather get turned than get eliminated. So if that's an option out there, if there's an A door and a B door, just let me know which one's which, please, guys.
We're the guys you buy.
Yeah.
Right? We're the guys you buy. We'll say anything you want. Listen, we're not asking a lot. I'm saying what? 750,000 subscribers for the channel.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll figure out some residuals. We'll get Ashton here. He's doing some work. Get him $1.5 million, right?
Word on the street is if you do what they say, they get you in the top 100 of US podcasts.
Oh yeah, is that what it? That's how you get into that?
I was going to leave that one out, but that is the word on the street.
That's a pretty nice perk there. Yeah.
Yeah,
but yeah, so if you all of a sudden see me one day just come out and be like, sorry guys, it's over. It turns out it was a VFX from the 90s, low quality VFX from the 90s. Case is over. We're just gonna let this one go. And that's the secret message if you see that happen, I guess.
You know what the problem
Chinese
is,
lanterns,
Sorry, it's Chinese lantern all along.
Chinese lanterns. Batman balloons. It's a Batman balloon. It was swamp gas reflected off the Batman balloon.
Exactly.
Now, it's the craziest thing is, and this is for all the government people, which I guarantee are going to watch this show. I guarantee it. Your disinformation is terrible. Do you know that?
I gotta get better.
Do you know you're fucking up your only job, man? Like, this is the people you're getting are not good. What you need to do is, you know what? You just send us an email. We'll work through it. I got some ideas scratched out. Low cost of operation. All right.
Yeah.
It's going to be much better.
Stop being so transparent. You know, start being more sketchy. Start telling people to look for ships that might be giant ships that might be buried underground somewhere. You know,
I already do that.
Start setting people on wild goose cases.
I'm halfway there.
Stop giving away verifiable information. You know, yeah.
Oh, no. We need to give away more, but you give them to less credible unknown sources.
Oh yeah, sorry. Sources are telling me. Secret sources are telling me that
exactly.
You know, this and that, and never say who it is. Never say anything about it. Yeah, sorry, I have to protect my sources all the time.
Always, always. I can't say.
You know, it's just too much for you guys to tell you guys the truth. You know, that's the other one too that they always pull out. Well, it's so huge that I can't tell you.
I also want multiple book deals, and we all need to be on the circuit.
Yes. Also, I need several. I don't have to write. I don't want to write them either. I don't do writing. I just want other people to write the books for me.
No, I'll write the book myself. I am a writer.
Okay. He'll do it.
I'm a writer. Yeah, no problem. I'll handle that.
And we want Patrick Stewart to do the audiobooks.
You know, I'm not a fan. But
how can you not be a fan of Patrick Stewart's voice?
No, I'm not a fan.
Well, someone's telling me that Anonymous linked my content while we started or something like that.
Crazy.
I don't know if I can trust Anonymous, man. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I heard that Anonymous has got controlled by the government.
Pretty sure they
are. Do we know?
But that's fine.
Wait, I have a lot of comments on my YouTube all of a sudden. That's interesting.
Well, is there a lot of 4-digit numbers?
Yeah, let me see if I've got 4-digit numbers in it. And that's the giveaway. That was the Icy Slide account. Icy Slide 4576. It's like they just had to stop at the only up to 99.99 is like the highest their numbers can go.
It is weird, isn't it, when people have like the accounts like that and they don't think to just change the name on them?
Actually, in Reddit, I don't think you can. That's what happened to me at least. But I agree with you.
In a certain part, again, they're getting government employees or other people to do this. You need to hire some people who are a little bit creative, artsy. I'm just saying, we got a good team here, right? Funding. Let us put out like it doesn't have to be Netflix. Let's say Amazon documentary of UFOs in the ocean. All right. You bank that pre-sell for us. We'll whip something together. I don't know how good it'll be. But the fact is, come on, guys. Come on.
Ashton, we've kept you for like 2.5 hours, and I know we've got you back on in January. I hope we've still got you back on in January.
Yeah, I'm down. I mean, January's a ways out, but I'll be hopefully if I'm still around. If I haven't,
with a beer,
we'll have a drinking one, a late night drinking one, and
we'll be discussing Chinese lanterns then.
Oh yeah,
I liked it. I like
balloons
from a studio.
I would like to see you before January get on with Mick West, though. I really would like.
I think people want it. It might happen.
You should invite him.
You think so? You think there's a chance of it really happening?
Yeah. I mean, I've heard from behind closed doors that there was more than one party trying to set it up.
Oh, they're trying to bully him into it.
After this last, apparently the rumor was that he wanted to wait until the Danny Jones podcast came out. Probably because he wanted to see what got dismantled, but
he wanted to see how it was received.
Yeah, see how it was received, probably, right? So we'll see. I certainly won't shy away from it.
I would say do it on your own channel. Do it just you and him.
Do it on this channel.
Oh yeah, do it on this channel,
and then put it on yours.
It definitely needs to be live, whatever it is. I don't want it to be recorded. I don't.
What I'm saying, I don't want you to be entrapped and walk into something with an interview, and then you get some other stuff coming in that you don't even know about, and blah 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 blah. I think it should just be a natural conversation.
We would never do that unless we were paid a large sum of money, and then I would absolutely send you a crypto. Yeah, you got Coinbase.
Give me percentage, man. Yeah, give me
not a problem. I'll cut you in for a fourth, no problem.
But he's got some questions that I think he would avoid asking, like, how do you make money? Exactly. Are you connected to the government directly or indirectly? These are questions that I think the first things that anybody has him on needs to ask him. Yeah, there you go. Show us your tax returns. This is a guy who supposedly is what? I mean, last time he had a job was like early 2000s. Like, what has this guy been doing? He doesn't monetize his YouTube. Doesn't monetize his website. Must lose tons of money. It's running a website's not cheap. So the question there is, he lives in one of the most expensive parts of the country, as far as I can tell from looking him up. You can't live off of just I don't think he had made hundreds of millions of dollars from one video game. He was one person as part of that the production of that game. So the question is he an influencer? Go ahead.
There was an interview with Tony Hawk. When he was saying the first check he got from that. Now, bearing in mind, it was Tony Hawk at the height of his power,
that's his video game. So, yeah,
the first check he was cut was $3 million that he was given for it. Now, so it's Mick West was just a developer. He was a code monkey like everyone else. So I'm sure he was very good at it. I'm just confused at what point everybody decided that this guy that helped make a skateboard game is the last word on fucking science.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's real weird. Did you see him try to debunk the Kim.com Sybaris video? That was weird. When I saw that, I'm like, okay, I went from 99.9% sure he's a spook to 100% because he's now trying to debunk U.S. definite military satellite capabilities. Right. And that's where I'm like, okay, somebody is doing a bad job as his handler because you're making it too obvious now. Right. Like there's no reason to be coming out against something like that. It's literally just a video of the satellites scanning the whole world.
Yeah.
What? See, oh no, the resolution is not good enough. What are you talking about?
But it shouldn't even be that crazy. The idea, we've got really good satellites. That should not be a conspiracy theorist.
They should have given us a task, man. We would have done a much better job of it.
You guys would be much better at disinformation. They needed the handlers needed pay him more, find some other people that can do the better job. I feel like
we're cheap.
He's phoning it in. He's not even doing a good job with it anymore.
Yeah.
So But this has been a fun conversation though. What I want to ask last though, is there any other questions about me being connected to the government that I can help dispel? The reason why I do a lot of this stuff, you're never going to see Mick West on a podcast like this, right? You're never going to see these people that are sketchy. For me, I'm trying to help all alternative media, and I think talking to the smaller ones I'm more comfortable with because I know you're real people. I know you're not controlled, right? You don't have 500,000 subs and only get 20,000 views on your videos.
Exactly. or 28.
Yeah.
But okay, so there's two things. So there is a push, right, of that you're a government asset or you're backed by some party. Because the reality is intelligence agencies are never one mind of anything. They're multiple minds of multiple things. They're working actively against each other at all times. That's just what it is. So the first thing is, and I think is an easy address, is everyone calls you a grifter, which it kind of irritates me because I don't know of any way you're making money on this. You don't qualify as a grifter, right?
No,
everyone's like, he's writing a book. This is all pushing for his book. Are you writing a book for this?
I know I'm not writing a book. Honestly, I wouldn't even want to write a book. I would be happy though if somebody wants to write a book for me, and then I can just take royalties off of it or something. That would be pretty sweet, to be honest with you. But to me, it's more I want to get the answers first, and then we can start talking about books and whatever stuff like that. In terms of making money so far, I did actually just get paid by Twitter today. I think I made like $80 actually, which is pretty decent money, but that's not going to pay any bills. I'm still down probably at least $1,000 from what I've been putting into this compared to what I've gotten back. But the people donating on YouTube who've been very generous are, I guess, to a degree, they're giving some credit to that because they're just donating to me, but I've never asked anyone for money. And I keep telling those people, even yesterday, I made the pitch that if you need this money, please do not give it to me. I'd much rather have people that need the money keep their own money. But if the type of person who just has excess money around, they want to help the investigation, sure, I appreciate it.
Maybe they're tripping over it, something like that.
But I'm not out here raising money for anybody. I'm not trying to monetize my following. I'm currently not writing a book or anything. I will say that I would like a documentary to get made about this because I think that's the best way to reach the most amount of people. I'm pretty sure the government will shut it down. I don't think that it'll ever get off the ground. And they'll talk to whoever producer tries to do it. They won't let Netflix show it or whatever. But part of that reasons too is because I thought the Netflix documentary was so awful that they should just delete it off of Netflix. Worst documentary I've ever seen in my life. And not just from a production standpoint, but just from a content standpoint, it was terrible.
You've never seen a Third Phase of Moon documentary, have you?
That's why I said from a production standpoint, it's just But yes, maybe I haven't seen all the bad ones out there.
All right,
maybe the worst one on Netflix. Go ahead.
With that, we go to the second one. The other one is that you have massive responses on X, Twitter, whatever, and like videos. Like I was also in the live chat. I saw you responding earlier today to the Danny Jones podcast, and people are like, "Man, it's almost like it's his full-time job. He is everywhere. He is on top of that."
That part's interesting because I think it goes to show how lazy the government is. My intent in that is to show that I'm a real person, so that I have real emotions, real personality. I want to respond to as many people as I can because I feel like just connected to the people that are responding. My engagement is probably 100 times higher than most people's engagement on Twitter. And that is more just because people are dedicated to this. They've looked at the evidence and they're just convinced. And this is part of the stuff that I was even warning Danny about. It's like, if you try to be dishonest, they're going to rip you to shreds, because the reality is, like, people are passionate about this case, and they're passionate because they've seen the weight of the evidence. And so I don't use any bots. I've never paid for any bots. I don't use them. Everything you see is my own personal opinions, my own personal views. I've spent so much of my life in the last 3 months doing this. Every moment I've been away from work, I've pretty much been working on the case, talking to podcasts like you guys, recently doing streams to show the transparency and show the work. But as you can see, some of my content has slowed down because of that. Like, I only have so many hours in the day, right?
Yeah.
And even jumping on the Danny one today, part of the reason why I did that is because I was talking to Diamond on the Oppenheimer Ranch podcast. And he was telling me to, like, join it's very big to be engaged and join in the chat to help you, like, build up followers, build up support. And so that's part of the reason why I started doing it. I didn't used to do that as much before, like watch the replays or whatever else. So I just wanted to get in there to show people. And I also just kind of wanted to see, like, that was probably the biggest podcast I've done. So I wanted to see what the real-time reaction was. And, like, all my haters were in there. It was kind of an interesting little party we had going on there. So,
it was amazing. And the third, there's a kind of not a government. I think that covers it. I mean, those are really the only things I could see anything that would make stick for that. Everything else is nonsensical. But so the third one is a personal, like, I think it's a good interview question. And like, I don't know how much of interviewers we are as much just conversationalists, but maybe the only interview question I have is, if you could Still knowing what you know now, everything.
Mhm.
Wind back that clock and never push to go public.
Oh, yeah.
Would you do it?
I wouldn't change a thing. Absolutely
Wouldn't
not.
change a thing.
No chance. And people want to know, why am I the person? I didn't want to be this person. I'd rather be the person in the chat right now talking about the person who's on the screen right now. It's a lot easier. It's just a lot less pressure. I could go back to watching some Netflix stuff or whatever I used to be doing. But somebody had to step up, man. Somebody had to do it. Somebody had to be brave and say, I'm going to take this chance. I'm going to reveal these videos. And I just said, nobody else is going to do it, then I guess I will, right? So absolutely not. I wouldn't change a thing. We are not going to stop till we get the truth, or till I get turned into a CIA asset, until we get that book deal or whatever we're talking about. Either that's how it's going to play out, or until they silence me. I just, at this point, I don't care. I've come to terms with whatever might come at this point, and I'm fine with it. I think that the families deserve the truth. I've never thought I would come across anything like this in my life. Never thought even a conspiracy this big could even exist. And I never thought it would be this easy to expose either, So however this plays out, I don't know what the future holds, but we're just going to we're going to ride this wave out with no regrets.
Awesome, man.
I've got one as far as the, is Ashton a CIA asset?
Yeah.
Where, like, on the surface of this, and for the record, I don't think you're an asset.
That's me.
But it looks on the surface of it, you look like a lone researcher that's putting all this time into it. But whenever you say it, you always say we're looking into this, we're doing that. So do you have help behind the scenes of what you're doing?
So the reason why I say that is something I learned from being from my normal job. And it was from the Crucial Conversations class that I took as part of my normal job. I think everybody should take Crucial Conversations. I thought it was going to be one of these crappy seminars where they tell you a bunch of bullshit that doesn't mean anything. But it turns out it actually teaches you how to speak with people, how to communicate with people, how to reach an element of trust with people, how when communication breaks down, how you can bring it back up. And one of the things you learn is to refer to things as we, not I, but we. And that brings people in. Is that it's not just about me. And the reality is this isn't just about me. I do have a team of people that are in my Discord. They're not necessarily doing exactly what I'm doing, but they're helping out. They're offering their assistance here or there. They're researching stuff. This is about us getting the answer, right? And this shouldn't be about me. A lot of people want to say I'm egotistical, narcissist, that I'm put this, that I've taken this helm or whatever of, making this happen. But the reality is this is about us getting the answers from our government collectively. And I could be anyone. I could be you, any of you guys. I could be anyone in the chat. I could be anyone in my Discord. Anyone that wants the truth could easily be me. So that's the reason why I refer to we as much as possible. But sometimes when I do say I'm usually being very careful. Like every time I write the word I think about, should this be I or should this be we? And that's the reason why I do that. It's certainly not because I'm working with the government. That's not the we that I'm referring to ever in those situations. So I like these questions, though, because these are the kind of questions that I would probably have asked for myself, if I'm looking at someone else in the same role. The other one, too, that I would say is that, like, it's some people, like, and this is kind of just a praise, will be like, this is too much work for one person to be doing. Like you were saying, how could this be like one researcher doing all this? And that just shows the dedication, right? In terms of, I don't know. I've always been somebody who can do a lot of work in a very short period of time. And it goes to show that like every waking hour that I'm not sleeping or working on my normal job, I try to dedicate to different aspects of this. And even it impresses me. I was looking at my compilation of the I think it was version 2 compilation I put out there. I couldn't believe how much work I put in. I was looking at it, I'm like, geez, this is a lot. So yeah, it is. I mean, that shows how much work that we can do when we stop watching Netflix and care about things that are important in the world and getting answers for other people that have been gaslit and questioning our government.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Ollie.
Oh, and thanks, Red Panda,
Ollie's
too.
Muted. Yeah,
Red Panda is.
I would just say it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I love you guys, man. It's fun talking to you guys. Every single time I have like the best conversations with you all in terms of just talking about conspiracy stuff, talking about the case. This also gives me an opportunity to just kind of speak freely about stuff that's going on as well, which I like. Because it's hard to who I can trust and who I can talk to, and doing stuff like this. And I think it gets a good reception from the audience as well, because they like to see just candid conversation between some dudes just kind of shooting the breeze, right?
Yeah.
It must be tough as well, because you've now you've done so many podcasts. just doing the same thing every time and getting the same answers off people as you're trying to explain this information. That must be it must wear.
Surprisingly, it doesn't really that much. You'd think it would. I keep wondering, when's the day where I'm gonna be like, I don't want to go over all this stuff again. But it keeps me. I don't know. It's just I think the case is so interesting. I found myself reading my own letter to Congress like a dozen times, and every time I read it, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be boring. But I find like I can't stop reading until I get to the bottom of it, because that's just how compelling it is. Like, I was even talking to my family at Thanksgiving, and I was like the center of attention going through all this stuff with them, and it's fun to kind of talk through all the stuff with them to get different perspectives on it. And my aunt is like, I didn't realize how conspiratorial she was. And she's like going into all the conspiracy stuff. And like, I'm trying to correct her and be like, okay, that's a little too deep, but yeah.
I know what you mean. I never listen back to like our shows. It's only like specific ones to listen back to. And certain ones, like the episode we all did together, I listen back to that. And if something's interesting enough, you can listen back to it and take yourself out of it, and then just listen to it as if you listen to another podcast that you were involved with.
That was part of the reason why I listened to the Danny Jones one as well. So I almost never listened to my own podcasts. But that was one where I wanted to see how I came off and how I came across. And I actually even impressed myself. Like, I thought that I handled it pretty well, given somebody that high amount of skepticism. I don't feel like I showed any emotion or got upset at any point as well. And that was just kind of to test, because I knew that was going to be one where I was like, there was a high chance that it might get either edited or I might be looked in a bad light. So I don't know. I think that just practice makes perfect, I guess they say. Done a lot. So
do you think in some ways, when you went on like his mate's podcast a couple of weeks ago, do you think that might have done like him a disservice for his show, because you were more prepared what you were walking into?
Oh yeah, and I studied up after that too, because I was like, we're not letting that happen again. So and I was expecting and ready for the same questions that I got in the earlier podcast. So I had already dug and done all my homework about the details of how the doors work, all the different ways you can get through the doors, how the oxygen tanks work, everything that they tried to catch me on. Because I totally expected all that stuff. So it'll help me.
One
for
of the good ones was the artist rendition of what the plane would have looked like from the eyewitness of it.
Oh yeah,
because that stopped any like the 10 minutes or so of going, oh no, you couldn't see that from there, because when you see a rendition of it, you go, oh right, okay, is that what something looks at that many thousand
funny.
feet?
I noticed the same thing while I was watching it live today. I was like, oh man, when I pull the picture up, that really helps people to understand, like, oh, that's what she's looking at, right? And that ended that whole conversation pretty much. So yeah. Ollie, did you have something? I saw you question.
I was just gonna say, just finally before we kind of wrap this up, that have you been affected by this? Just because you seem to be like a rock when it comes to taking all this shit off people. I'm just wondering, does this ever affect you?
Yeah, surprisingly, no. And maybe that's another reason why I'm a good person for being this type of person that has to take all this negativity and stuff that comes in. Like I tell people, I'm not joking when I say I don't think about the haters at all. Like, I really never think about them at all in my day, and just move on from it. And I've been, I guess, tempered by the internet and social media. I used to be on Reddit all the time back until like probably right before 2020. And I had seen other places as well. I used to be on fark.com actually as well, which was like Reddit before Reddit was a thing. And so I was exposed to all levels of trolls that would exist out there. And I used to let them upset me and get angry. And then you learn to deal with it. And I've learned people think I need a thicker skin. I'd say my skin is as thick as it can possibly get. There is essentially no way to rattle me at all. And that's just from experience, man. 20 years of dealing with the internet and watching it grow and what have you. So there's nothing that they can say that can faze me, period. And so I appreciate that. That's high praise to say that seemed like a rock.
You do. Yeah, you got it together.
If anything, tonight's show before this show, Concrete, the poll that you put out is kind of in your favor.
That's a good one, man. That's a real good one. Because we're talking about a crew that, like, they even express it in the headline that it's going to be some kind of exposure or whatever, and think that it's fake or whatever like that. And if you looked at the chat, you would have thought that that's going to be like 75% of the people were thinking it's fake. So to have more than 50% say it's real, to me, that's huge. Like, that's huge.
I was amazed by that when it was happening.
I think we have to accept too, there's a lot of people that are never going to be able to accept this to be real, that are not as open-minded as you guys. And you guys are still skeptical, of course, which is totally warranted. But there's people out there that doesn't matter the evidence. Like my same aunt was talking about the conspiracy stuff. She said that she was talking to my cousin, her son, and like he was like, full on CNN brain of, no, that can't be possible. It's just stupid. That's just dumb. Right. But, of course, not even really thinking about it. And so you've got a significant percentage of people. I would argue maybe even 25 to 50% of all people on the planet. That's their mindset, is that they're not even going to be able to consider the evidence. Right. And consider that there might be more to this world. So for that to say 54% to me is a huge win.
Yeah. Well, man, we love having you on. I can't wait to have you on again. Next time we'll talk about, I'm sure we'll touch on this subject. Then we can talk about some crazy shit.
Yeah, let's do it, man. We're going to booze a little bit, get a little bit weird, and, talk about some deep conspiracy topics. I can't wait.
I'm going to make sure I'm not driving somewhere after the show.
That's probably best.
I'll be drinking dirty martinis over here, so we'll be getting sloppy.
I will join you. Ashton, thank you so much.
Thank you guys.
Dave, thank you, everybody in the chat, everybody's supporting the channel, everybody's financially supporting the channel. Love you guys. Love all of you. Anybody's put the thumbs up. Keep doing it. Spread the word. Alien Addict. We're here to stay.
And I just want to say, you guys should follow. Oh, okay.
Oh, no, you're good.
No, just flashback. I want to say, everybody out there who's my followers, check out Alien Addict. Follow these guys on YouTube. Follow these guys on Twitter as well. They are real ones that are out there telling the truth. Normal people. They deserve the follow. They deserve for people paying attention to them. And one day we will all become spooks and work together and flip sides together. So I can't wait.
Goal right there, man. Sell out hard.
Hard sell out.
Here for.
Yeah. Anyway, this was awesome, guys. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Malaysian 370, contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night.
Good night, Malaysian 370.
Breaking news tonight, a Malaysia Airlines flight with 239 people on board, including 4 Americans, has gone missing.
From the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds."
You know what would be a good spin on that butthole thing? Is like, listen, your butthole is not my butthole because yours is elastic and mine is tangy, but they do look similar. Doesn't mean they are similar. Just got to add a little extra flavor to the detail. Catch them off guard, slow them down.